Chapter 953. Some people's intuition is extremely sharp, especially Dustless, who has experienced the slaughter of two worlds. Suddenly opening his eyes, what came into his sight was Shidoro Senjumaru's hostility. His whole body was overflowing with ominous aura, and the flowing air around him was strangely shining and jumping. Looking closely, the water in the atmosphere has condensed into ice. In addition, Shidoro Senjumaru's indifferent face was also surrounded by coldness. The measurement of the Death Lord costume is completed. Now let's change the topic. Taking the initiative to distance himself from Dustless, Shidoro Senjumaru said, "When you first came to Soul Society, who caused the huge chaos, not to mention awakening the Zanpakuto, it can fool Yamamoto and the others, but it's useless against me." After saying that, a biting cold murderous aura locked onto Dustless. In a trance, Dustless felt thousands of sharp weapons locked onto him, as if he lied he would die on the spot. Dustless couldn't deny Shidoro Senjumaru's words. Except for a certain male protagonist in the future, the Zanpakuto of everyone in Soul Society is inextricably linked to the Hyogo Division's first soldier and Nyamiya Wangyu in the Spirit King Palace. One of them named everything in Soul Society, including the Zanpakuto, and the other created the original Zanpakuto of every Shinigami, Shane Tatsu. Naturally, he knew that Dustless didn't awaken the Zanpakuto. "Yes, then what are you going to do? Arrest me immediately?" With his plan exposed, Dustless didn't bother to pretend. His voice returned to its usual laziness, casually put on his pajamas and then leaned against the wall calmly. His undaunted expression caused Shidoro Senjumaru to roll his eyes. "It's not like arresting you, you're at most a person with a little strength of unknown origin. There's Retsu monitoring you. And it's best if you can use your strength to serve Soul Society." Shidoro Senjumaru shook his head and said, and then his tone suddenly changed, revealing a hint of warning and threat. "However, if one day you do something bad to the world, it's up to you." Hey. Dustless picked up a fruit from the fruit platter and started munching on it. After taking a glance at the Shitayuo thousand-hand pill, Dustless completely ignored these words and treated them as nonsense. Rules were meant to be broken, and there was no one who could restrain him. "Indeed, I didn't awaken any Zanpakuto. That was just an excuse I came up with to deal with the head captain." Seeing that his lie had been exposed, Dustless was too lazy to continue lying. He patted his chest and swore, "But in this life I will definitely use my life to defend the peace of Soul Society." His resolute voice was sonorous and forceful, causing Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru to be stunned for a moment before he said disdainfully, "This is Soul Society. Even if you want to rebel, you need to have the strength to do so." Dustless shrugged and didn't care about these words. He really didn't plan to destroy Soul Society for the time being. Even if he did, it would be a matter for the future. It wouldn't be too late to wait until he learned the energy of spiritual pressure. In reality, the Calamity invasion wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like this had never happened before. Shinozuki Ichigo and the first Shinigami acting Silver City Kongo could be counted as such to a certain extent. Now that Dustless was the vice-captain of the 4th Division, it was equivalent to surrendering to Soul Society in disguise. Shitayuo Thousand-Hand Pill and Division 0 were happy to see this. "Since it wasn't you who tore the sky above Soul Society." Shitayuo Thousand-Hand Pill lowered his head and pondered. He was puzzled. Soul Society's sky was inexplicably torn apart by someone, and it was even filled with Greater Void's spiritual pressure. Actually, it's very simple. This sentence attracted Shitayuo Thousand-Hand Pill's attention. He raised his eyebrows slightly and immediately said ungratefully, "Why are you blindly involved? This is none of your business. Also, you're not allowed to tell anyone that you met me today." Remembering Division 0's sensitive identity, Shitayuo Thousand-Hand Pill made 3 rules. "I'm the person involved." Glancing at Shitayuo Thousand-Hand Pill, Dustless continued to count. The types of voids can be roughly divided into 3 types. The first type is the top-level voids, the second type is the Ajuchas, and the last type is the unenlightened Jillian. At this point, Dustless obviously raised his voice as he recalled the scene when he transmigrated. His eyes shone brightly as he said, "In the torn sky at that time, it was actually filled with the lowest-level greater voids like Jillian. There was no Ajuchas or the higher-level Vastotod. There were a lot of them, definitely not less than 1,000. Impossible." Shitayuo Thousand-Hand Pill's face changed upon hearing this. The spiritual pressure around his body was extremely dense, like boiling water bubbling. It was extremely terrifying. I've already said it. It's up to you to believe it or not. Sipping his tea, Dustless turned a deaf ear to Shutaluo Thousand Hand Pill's murderous intent. His words had actually pointed out who the mastermind behind this was. As everyone knew, Jillian belonged to the lower voids and had no intelligence. Although it could use the black cavity to invade the modern world, it was usually ordered by the higher-level ajuches. Under the situation where there was no one controlling it, Jillian would definitely not invade Soul Society on a large scale, let alone thousands of them. However, there was now a large number of Jillian in Soul Society, but there were no ajuches or Vastotod-level greater voids controlling it. What did this mean? It indirectly indicated that there was someone secretly supporting Soul Society to pave the way for the greater voids to invade. Chapter 954. So far, the only person who wanted to harm Soul Society was Sosuke Aizen. Although this was just Dustless's baseless conjecture, only Sosuke Aizen and his two lackeys, Ise Sensei and Jin Ikamaru, were capable of mobilizing thousands of Killian and invading Soul Society without anyone noticing. It wasn't difficult for the three captains to mobilize thousands of Minos to invade Soul Society. If Jin and Ise Sensei were Sosuke Aizen's lackeys, their cooperation would have been flawless. However, even Aizen didn't expect Dustless Sky to suddenly cross over. His precise plan wasn't messed up. Thousands of grand voids were enough to destroy the world, but compared to the system, it was just a drop in the ocean. So the Minos didn't come out alive and Dustless fell instead. Do you know what you mean by that? Shiro asked with a pale face. A layer of ice covered her face. Sigh. Looking at the murderous Shout-Oro Thousand-Handed Maru, Wuxia sighed and looked up at the wooden ceiling. I'm just too kind. I obviously know that I'm going to die, but I still chose to tell the truth. Hey. Hearing this, Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru's pretty face was filled with astonishment. For thousands of years, this was the first time she met someone who was so shameless. He slandered Yenching Kenpachi for no reason and even beat him up violently to establish his prestige. Now he actually shamelessly said that he was kind. This was the first time Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru had met such a person. Are you sure? Remembering Dustless's strength when he defeated Kenpachi Ghost Yenching, Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru could not help but hesitate. He lowered his voice and asked with slight anticipation. What's the benefit of me tricking you? Taking a deep look at Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru, Wuxia didn't answer but asked instead. Shidoro Thousand Handed Maru nodded thoughtfully. He reluctantly agreed with Wuqia's words. Everything was about motive. As far as the current situation was concerned, Wuqia indeed had no benefit in deceiving her. That's all for today. I'll come back for you in the future. After taking a deep look at Wuqia, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru floated away, leaving Wuqia with a view of his back. In the end, he gradually turned into an ink dot and disappeared. I finally got rid of this jinx. Dustless was sleepy, but because of Unohana Retsu and Shiro's invasion, he didn't feel sleepy at all. He strolled around the courtyard in boredom. Looking at the stars in the sky, his mind wandered, thinking about the current situation. I can only wait a while. Even if I kill Kenpachi Ghost now, Yamamoto won't let me take the captain's position. Dustless thought to himself. He had only been in Soul Society for a day or even less than a day. Yamamoto would never be so absurd as to hand over the 11th division to him. Sosuke Aizen, staring at the bright moon in the sky, Dustless was speechless. Even if he told them the truth, Soul Society would think he was making it up. They might even arrest Dustless as a suspect. Accusing the captain without evidence was not a small crime. Aizen also had two loyal lackeys, Ikamaru Jin and Higashi Sensei. They worked together perfectly and no one could take down Aizen and the others. In the gloomy underground world, there were all kinds of sophisticated instruments monitoring every corner of Soul Society. Even the captain's first division was under the observation of these instruments. Captain Aizen, should we continue with our plan? In the dark space, a malicious voice sounded with a hint of schadenfreude. With the help of the fluorescent light on the screen, three figures could be clearly seen walking out of the dark space. Looking closely, it was Sosuke Aizen, his lackeys Tae Sensei and Jin. Of course, how can we stop our plan because of a nobody? That young man called Dustless is far from enough to influence us to give up our plan. Sosuke Aizen's voice was very soft, his expression was gentle. but there was a coldness that penetrated deep into the soul. Just like Dustless said, this man was a poisonous snake hiding in the dark. Xianxia. The creation of the great void inside Shinozaki Ichigo was about to be completed, but it was destroyed by that kid. Should we? Taise-sensei made a throat-slitting gesture at Susuke Aizen. Hearing this, Aizen stopped. For the first time in his life he showed a rare look of confusion. At that time he was secretly manipulating the Great Void to sneak into Soul Society from the Black Cavity. Who would have thought that the plan would not be able to keep up with the changes? A space-time storm suddenly appeared in the Black Cavity, destroying thousands of Jillians. Only Dustless came out unharmed. Aizen's plan failed on the verge of success. Those Minos voids were actually tools he used to create voids. To create voids he needed a large number of voids and Shinigami's souls, but they were all destroyed in an instant. Just thinking about it made Aizen angry. Aizen's expression was gloomy. He wasn't happy that things had gotten out of his control. It doesn't matter if we kill him, but we don't need to do it ourselves. Gui Yanqing has a deep grudge with him. We can use him to get rid of that Dustless. Aizen Sokiai said viciously. Chapter 955. Complicated data was displayed in the various sophisticated instruments. It was extremely difficult for ordinary people to understand them, let alone understand them. Captain Aizen, the experiment is at a critical stage and we don't have many Minos on hand. Shouldn't we go to Hueco Mundo and catch a few? Ikamaru Jin said with a smile. The corners of his mouth were raised high and his eyes were narrowed into slits. He looked like a cunning fox harboring evil intentions. Indeed. East Deity agreed after hearing this. Forget about going to Hueco Mundo. Although Kyoka Suigetsu's ability is invincible, it doesn't mean it's invincible. If we sneak out of Soul Society, it's hard to avoid exposing ourselves. Just like today, there's no need to do it personally. We can just catch a few to test, and we can also injure the Shinigami. It's the best of both worlds. Aizen touched his glasses and said expressionlessly. There was no doubt that once the Minos successfully invaded Soul Society, they would wreak havoc and there would be endless casualties. However, this had nothing to do with Susuke Aizen. He wanted to be on the same level as the gods and even become a god. The life and death of mortals was nothing to him. The next morning the sun was bright and there were no clouds in the sky. Dustless came to the 4th Division early after a good night's sleep. He thought there was a mission, but when he arrived he was shocked. A large number of members were bored and gathered together to sketch and draw. They were having a lot of fun and some were even arranging flowers. If I stay with you guys every day, when will I be able to leave the 4th Division? Wuchen muttered to himself. His heart, which was surging with passion, fell from the clouds to the bottom and shattered all over the ground. While he was distracted, a beautiful figure appeared in his eyes and pulled Dustless back to reality. What did Senjumaru say to you yesterday? You're so distracted, Chinkun. A soft voice entered his ears. Unohana Retsu walked over with a smile. She had an amiable temperament, and the first impression she gave was that she was very friendly and approachable. Following behind her was Kazuto Toru, who was currently in the 3rd Division. She was the future 4th Division vice-captain, but because of Dustless's strong interference, her position was temporarily taken. Nothing much. We just chatted for a bit and asked about what happened that day. Dustless said with a smile. Unohana Retsu's expression showed that she did not know anything, which meant that Shudora Thousand Hand Maru had been very tight-lipped about their conversation yesterday. It's that simple? Ripples appeared in Anohua's watery eyes as she asked doubtfully. This is definitely the truth. How would I dare to lie to Captain Uno Flower? Dustless guaranteed, his face not turning red at all. The doubt in Anohua's eyes disappeared, and she reluctantly accepted Dustless's explanation. She then looked at the disappointed Dustless and said, "This is the situation of the 4th Division. Everyone spends their days cultivating their minds. Only when war breaks out can the 4th Division truly shine. Letting an ambitious person like you stay in the 4th Division is indeed a bit of a waste of talent." Unohua said sympathetically. Even if Dustless hit it well, she could still see the burning flames in the depths of his eyes. After living for more than 1,000 years, her experience was dozens of times greater than Dustless's. It doesn't matter. A person's life is always full of twists and turns. Let nature take its course. Moreover, it's not as if I have nothing to do. I still have a lot of things to ask Captain Unohua. Dustless said with relief. He still had not figured out the origin of spiritual pressure, so he could use this time to ask Unhua about it. However, everything was just as Dustless had said. A person's life was full of unknowns and hard to predict. Just as he became indifferent to his desire to become a captain, the heavens gave him face. Kakaka. The sky above the 4th Division suddenly exploded, revealing a long and narrow hole that was clearly connected to another world. From time to time, the roars of wild beasts could be heard. Of course, along with the roars came a wave of spiritual pressure, and a large number of huge figures walked out from the hole. The figures covered the sky and blocked the sunlight. The entire 4th Division's building was dark and filled with despair. What is this? The members of the 4th Division hurriedly walked out of the building and looked up at the endless Minos walking out of the black hole. Their faces were filled with fear, and some of them even felt their legs go soft. The 4th Division belonged to the medical division, and their combat power was their biggest weakness. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Several Minos opened their mouths and spat out dangerous red light, which condensed into a huge red sphere. The blood-red light emitted a dangerous wave. Void flash. Unhua, who had rushed out with Dustless, was shocked. She gathered a high density of spiritual pressure in her palm and was about to use Hado to destroy the sphere when the sky was filled with flashes of light. Yasakani no Magatama. The dazzling flashes of light whizzed out, and Jillian, who was more than 10 meters tall and was not good at moving, became the perfect target. Roar, roar, roar. The surrounding Minos cried out in pain. Their bodies were mercilessly pierced through, and there were dozens of holes. Just one wave of attack was enough to take away a whole group of Jillian. How did these Minos invade Soul Society? Unhua said with an ugly expression. Compared to that, I'm more curious. When did Jillian become so smart? Dustless sharply sensed that something was wrong and asked Unhua. The 4th Division is a medical team. Their combat power is weak, but they are the medical protection of the Grim Reaper. These brainless Jillian chose to attack the 4th Division first. They are too smart. Chapter 956. Dustless was not the only one who was confused. Even Unhua was confused. After a while, a cold light flashed through her eyes. Unhua was a meticulous person. After hearing Dustless's hint, she immediately understood what he meant. I hope that Jillian's arrival in the 4th Division is just a coincidence. Looking at Jillian, who kept coming out of the black hole, Unhua prayed in her heart. Roar. The entire Soul Society was filled with the roars of great voids. It was not only limited to the 4th Division. The entire Soul Society was buried by the Great Void's attacks. Rice Bucket, what are you useless people doing? A bunch of Great Voids invaded Soul Society and you guys didn't even know about it. How am I going to explain this to the head captain? You bastards are only fit to be experiment subjects. Mayuri Lai's furious roar came from the 12th Division. Through the surveillance screen he could clearly see the sorry state of Soul Society. As if they had agreed beforehand, the Great Voids came from all directions, from all kinds of tricky and unexpected corners, wantonly destroying Soul Society. Mayuri Lai almost vomited blood when he saw this. His body turned cold. With such a huge mess he would definitely not have a good time with the head captain. Shinra Tensei. The corner of his clothes suddenly bulged. A repulsive force broke out of his body, forming a perfect 360-degree defense. Bang! The red void disappeared. It was repelled by the repulsive force from Dustless's body. An explosion occurred in the distant horizon, and a blazing fire engulfed everything. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Immediately after, the first-generation ghost blade came out of its scabbard. With a wave of his hand, a huge red slash appeared, creating ripples in the air. Poochie. The dumb Jillian did not even think of dodging this skill. His mountain-like body was instantly penetrated by the red light and split into two. There are so many of them. Dustless's line of sight was locked within 1,000 meters. To his astonishment, he discovered that there were more than 1,000 Great Voids wandering around Soul Society. If one didn't know better, they might even think that this was Hushu Ring. Dustless chuckled in his heart. His dispirited mood was swept away. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him to make a name for himself. If he could show off a little of his strength, he might be able to replace any captain that was killed in the future. It's time to retreat, Lord Chen. Just as he was lost in his thoughts, Unhua Lai's serious voice sounded. A black butterfly suddenly appeared in her hand. Dustless knew that this was the hell butterfly that Soul Society used to communicate with each other. Most of the members of the 4th Division are in hiding, so there's no need to worry. Head Captain, inform all division captains and vice captains to head to the 1st Division for an emergency meeting. With that, Unohana Lai used transient step to leave, leaving behind several afterimages in the air. Dustless furrowed his brows when he heard this. Soon after, he followed Unohua Retsu and left. With so many Jillians, it would be impossible to kill them all in a short amount of time. The atmosphere in the 1st Division's building was extremely tense. In the spacious hall, the captains were divided into 2 rows and stood in an orderly manner, their expressions meticulous. Behind them were Dustless and the other vice captains. The scene was abnormally solemn and heavy, and even the usually sloppy Jingle Chunshue had a serious expression on his face right now. The head captain, Old Man Yamamoto, was not as kind as before. His sunken eyes were bulging and his eyes were bloodshot. Even though the head captain tried his best to remain calm, his body was still slightly trembling. The walking stick in his hand was also slightly trembling. The Ryujin Jaka hidden within it also sensed Old Man Yamamoto's anger and let out a clear cry. The atmosphere was even more terrifying. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. They were afraid that the strongest death god would not be able to suppress the flames and would kill them all in one fell swoop. This is probably the first time in 1,000 years that this old man is so angry. Dustless, who was standing behind Unohana Lai, thought. He could even see the veins on Old Man Yamamoto's forehead bulging. It was obvious that he was about to go berserk. It's most likely related to this old man. He's always happy to see things that are not good for Soul Society. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at Aizen. Even though it was just an unfounded guess, he was sure that the mastermind behind this was Aizen Sosuke, the king of Hueco Mundo Beilegan. He was Vasto Lord, a predator at the top of the pyramid. However, he still had self-awareness. He knew the consequences of attacking Soul Society rashly. He didn't have the courage to confront the head captain. Vasto Lord could crush captains, but he was only an ordinary captain. Even the heaven-defying Vasto Lord was at the end of his rope. Captain Nya. After a moment of silence, the head captain's gaze finally fell on Mayuri. Mayuri was quite funny. He was afraid that the head captain would see him, so he retreated as far as possible. He even stayed at the same level as Dustless and the other vice captains. But even so, he couldn't escape Old Man Yamamoto's eyes. Head captain. Mayuri's face was ugly as he walked out of the line. He looked miserable as if his parents had died. Dustless couldn't help but laugh when he saw that look of regret on his face. Chapter 957. The mission of the 12th Division was to develop items suitable for Shinigami and monitor Soul Society, including the movements of the main world and Hueco Mundo. I will listen to your explanation, but the most important thing now is to expel the Minos. Ping ping. At the end of his sentence, the captain knocked the ground with his cane. The 1st Division was silent. Only Mayuri was embarrassed. No one cared about him. The whole world seemed to have abandoned Mayuri. His negligence caused Soul Society to be breached and some divisions suffered heavy losses. The Minos in Soul Society are like turtles in a jar. There is no need to care about them. Just temporarily seal the Black Chamber where they invaded and terminate the connection between Soul Society and Hueco Mundo. A gentle, steady, wise, and far-sighted voice resounded. Wuxia noticed that the unexpected voice was quite familiar. He immediately looked for the source of the voice. Captain Mayuri is innocent. Hueco Mundo invaded Soul Society for the first time in hundreds of years, and Hueco Mundo is Bailgang's territory. Soul Society can't monitor it. The one who stood up for Mayuri was the captain of the 5th Division, Sosuke Aizen. This old man is shameless. He's the one behind all this, and Aizen is the one who took advantage of Mayuri. Now he's standing up for that old pervert? Dustless thought to himself. He thought he was shameless enough, but compared to Aizen he paled in comparison. Captain Aizen is right. The 12th Division's ability is limited. Although we are suspected of negligence, we can't reach Hueco Mundo. Sensei followed. We should immediately send troops to attack Hueco Mundo. Ikamaru Jin said. Although he wasn't helping Aizen, he was helping Mayuri escape. After Aizen said this, Yukitake Jushuru also agreed. Shunsui Kayokura was his friend, so he also supported him. Sajin, who had a good relationship with East Sensei, also nodded. Mayuri looked at Aizen gratefully. Aizen and his lackeys have already become friends with so many people. Lin Yun sighed. Dustless was speechless. Aizen's words were meant to help Cocoon escape, but he had the support of 7 or 8 captains. It wasn't unreasonable for him to be able to control Soul Society in the future. Now this was a disguised form of roping in Nirvana Cocoon. No wonder he would be able to do well in Soul Society in the future. Then let's do as Captain Aizen said, temporarily seal the entrance of Soul Society. Yamamoto made the decision after some contemplation. The acting of these 3 in collusion is worthy of the title of Best Actor. Dustless sighed in his heart. He was too lazy to meddle in other people's business. He was just an ordinary vice captain now. The number of deaths in Soul Society had nothing to do with him. The 80th district of Soul Society's Drifting Soul Street was originally a remote area, and it was usually a place where villains gathered, so very few death gods paid attention to this area. Therefore it was the only place for the Great Void to invade. From a long and narrow crack in the void, groups of Jillian walked out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After a while, many figures suddenly appeared on the open ground that was covered in blood and flesh. Can they do it? Wuxia said doubtfully as he looked at the Death God Ghost Sect members who were preparing for the battle. He felt that this group of fat, big-eared and strangely dressed Ghost Sect members were not reliable. No problem, the Keto are good at sealing enchantments. If they can't do it, then our group of medics and combatants can't do it either. Fuchsia, who was temporarily in charge of the 3rd seat, said confidently, maybe we can't deal with the Great Void above Ajuchas, but dealing with Jillian is no problem. Dustless didn't say anything more and stood still like a statue. After a while, the Ghost Path sect members who had finished their preparations finally took action. They all used instant steps to rush towards the sky. After clearing out Jillian in the long and narrow black cavity in a short period of time, a transparent golden membrane covered it, repairing the broken sky at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's finally over. Fuchsia breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Just when everyone thought it was over, a dazzling light suddenly flashed in the black hole that was about to close, and a sharp sound like lightning pierced their ears. It blasted towards the transparent golden membrane. Boom boom boom. An earth-shattering explosion soared into the sky. The seemingly sturdy film was easily torn apart like paper scraps. The ghost Daoists who did not manage to escape in time were vaporized by this merciless flash. They were wiped out and not even their bones were left. The destructive Ryatsu fluctuations shocked the entire Soul Society, and all the captains exclaimed. They encountered a great void. This guy is... A white figure walked out of the shattered black hole. Dustless looked up, and the great void in front of him was unexpectedly familiar. Did Aizen unify Hueco Mundo now? Looking at the great void overlooking Soul Society in the black hole, Dustless frowned and said, under the perception of observation hockey, there seemed to be more than one great void in this black hole. The Ryatsu fluctuations were also different, and several of them were mid-level great voids at the Ajuchas level. After careful observation, he was surprised to find that among them, there was Vasto Lord whose Ryatsu density was much higher than Ajuchas. Chapter 958. The black cavity that was gradually healing was shattered into pieces by the void flash, revealing a bigger black hole. A shiny gold upstart walked out from it. His whole body was cold and shiny. Especially under the sunlight, his whole body was extremely dazzling. Looking closely, it turned out that there were countless diamond rings on his fingers. The king of Hueco Mundo, Bal Egan Ruesan Gang? Looking at Bal Egan, Dustless was somewhat surprised. It was not because he was afraid of his title as the king of Hueco Mundo, or because he was the top grand void of Vasto Lord, but because he was not afraid of death and his spiritual thunder hit Dustless. Looking up at the sky, looking at Bal Egan who was standing in the sky, this old man was not afraid at all. It seemed like he wanted to fight with the head captain alone. Ants, who allowed you to look at me? Go to hell and repent. Lowering his head to look at the group of reapers on the ground, Bal Egan condensed an extremely dense black sphere at his fingertips. Due to the terrifying power, the void around the void flash was faintly distorted. Go to hell. The demonic black luster tilted down and blasted towards the ground mercilessly. Boom, boom, boom. The earth-shattering explosion swept across, mercilessly destroying Soul Society. The 80th district of Luhun Street was wiped out in an instant. The The bottomless pit on the ground was particularly eye-catching, and the affected mountains were forcibly flattened. A bunch of ants, you don't cooperate with this old man to fight. Smacking his big mouth full of fangs, Balegan said very disdainfully. The captain level was not enough in his eyes, let alone a group of unknown reapers. Whoosh! On the ground burning with black smoke, a golden light suddenly appeared. The light spread rapidly and evaporated the black smoke in an instant. What the hell is this? It didn't die. Balegan's smug face drooped, and his tone was filled with uncertainty. Vasto Lord's void flash, not to mention these cannon fodder death gods, even the captain would lose a layer of skin if they were hit. The slightest carelessness would cause them to fall. And the reapers below were intact, supported and protected by a huge golden barrier. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A straight beam of light shot into the sky, and the sky seemed to have been shattered by a divine sword, leaving behind afterimages that would never dissipate. Then an indifferent and emotionless voice lingered in Bailey's ears, lingering in the void for a long time without dissipating. It's just like what you said earlier. You're not worthy to fight with me. So go repent and atone for your sins in hell. Bailey was stunned and suddenly felt that his body had become much heavier. He raised his head and the scene that greeted him left him dumbfounded. Dustless was standing on the crown and talking to him in a tone that sounded like he was looking down on an ant. Bastard, you dare to step on my head. You are courting death. Balegan, the king of Hueco was infuriated. His trembling voice was full of shock and hatred, as dangerous as a barrel of gunpowder that was about to explode. Full of killing intent, the rapidly corroding black spiritual pressure broke out of his body. It was as passionate as the waves of a river, stirring up the flames of Balegang. Death's breath. The corrosive aura of aging surged into the sky, carrying with it Balegan's anger. It sprayed towards Dustless, who was stepping on his head, wanting to erase his entire person. Naive. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes were calm and indifferent, allowing the black aura of aging to wrap around him. You dare to step on my head, this is your end. Balegan laughed coldly, revealing a touch of satisfaction in his words. Looking up, Dustless's entire person was destroyed by the aura of aging. This was an invincible ability. No creature in this world could survive being wrapped by it. Vice Captain he, staring at Dustless, who was swallowed by layers of black smoke in the sky, Brave Hush was shocked, her eyes were filled with despair. Not only her but the Grim Reapers also had the same expression. Balegan, the king of Hueco was known for his ferocity in Soul Society. Vice Captain Dustless is very strong, there's no need to worry. Brave Hush comforted herself, remembering that Dustless defeated the 11th Division's captain, Ghost Yenching Kenpachi, and suddenly said with confidence, he'll be safe. Laughable, ignorant, safe and sound? You want me to be safe under my hands? Who do you think I am? I'm the king of Hueco Balegan Ruesan Gang. Even though Brave Tiger's voice was as soft as a mosquito, it was still heard by Bailey. He immediately snorted disdainfully and opened his mouth. Just as he was about to use his mouth to teach this god of death who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson, a burst of eternal ridicule came from within the black smoke of despair. Hey, who do you think you are, always thinking that you're special, an omnipotent existence? This iron law may prevail in Hueco but from the beginning to the end you've got one thing wrong. This is Soul Society, not your Hueco. In the extremely corrosive power of aging, a ripple visible to the naked eye suddenly came out. Kinra-tensei. As the voice fell, the power of aging surrounding Dustless suddenly disappeared, and was easily bounced away by the repulsive force, revealing a handsome young man. Of course, there was also the flash of light that had been condensing at the bottom of his feet for a long time. Intact? Bastard. Are you kidding me? Could it be that you're transparent and can ignore the aura of aging? The shocked Balegan roared in disbelief, and his tone had a hint of sharpness similar to the roar of steel. Transparent? You're quite smart. In a sense, I'm indeed a transparent person, but to put it more technically, I'm a shining person. This kind of thing certainly won't work on me. Dustless replied indifferently, and immediately his body flashed with light, and swept to Balegan's side at the speed of light. The flash of light condensed at the bottom of his feet fell heavily on Balegan's head. Lightspeed kick. Chapter 959. The benefits of killing Balegan were self-evident. Not only would his status in Soul Society rise, but it would also destroy Aizen's plan to rule Hueco-Mundo. In fact, Aizen relied on Balegan to control Hueco-Mundo. Later, Hueco-Mundo became Aizen's base camp. Dustless's purpose in coming to this world was very simple. He wanted to replace Soul King and become the new master of the Three Realms. Aizen naturally had the same plan, but Dustless couldn't let him do as he wished. Now was a golden opportunity to weaken him. Dustless wouldn't let it go. Death's breath. Hollow's probing nerves were abnormally sharp. Sensing an unprecedented danger, Balegan did not hesitate to use his best move. Not only could the aging gas attack, but it also had a perfect defense. Could corrode almost any attack. This was his trump card against Dustless. Or rather, it was his only trump card. Your attacks are useless against this old man. Balegan looked at the black gas raging all over his body. Seemed like it could corrode even space and time. He sighed in relief. His self-esteem recovered a lot. You're really stupid. Dustless looked at Balegan with pity. Then he suddenly raised his right hand. A pitch-black hole appeared in his palm and a strong gravitational force erupted. Wanxiang Heaven's Pull. Balegan's body that was standing upright in the sky immediately began to sway uncontrollably. Even though he tried his best to control the shaking of his body, he still flew towards Dustless uncontrollably. Boy, you're courting death. Balegan roared loudly. He was so angry that he laughed. The fangs on his huge head were wide open. He wanted to swallow Dustless alive. An even more dense aging aura erupted from his body. He wanted to completely annihilate Dustless. Before Dustless appeared, Balegan's #1 enemy was Sosuke Aizen. But now, Dustless left a footprint on his head that would never disappear. This glorious #1 enemy was replaced by Dustless. Even Balegan, who was on the Rage Index, wanted nothing more than to perish together with Dustless to vent the hatred in his heart. Idiot, you want to touch my body? Not to mention you, even your master can't touch my body with pure physical attacks. Dustless shook his head. Balegan was attacked by the gravitational force of the 10,000 Mammoth Heaven summoning. He did not dodge because there was no need to. Elemental transformation was almost immune to all physical attacks in this world. The moment Balegan touched Dustless, a majestic repulsive force erupted from his body. He smiled slyly. Shinra Tensei. Balegan's face was full of hope. He thought that he could destroy Dustless, but he didn't expect that the violent repulsive force would suddenly hit him and shatter his dream. Even his aging aura was bounced away, teasing the king of Hueco-Mundo like a monkey. This dramatic scene encouraged the Shinigami who were trapped in a bitter battle. They gritted their teeth and fought desperately with the Minos Voids. For a time, the Shinigami on the battlefield was in a state of defeat. It was strangely one-sided. The Shinigami captains who were rushing over from afar also widened their eyes when they saw this scene. When did the king of Hueco-Mundo become so weak? That damned bastard. One day I'll definitely kill him and avenge my humiliation. Kenpachi Ghost Yenqing, who used Shuanpa to rush over, had a green face. He held his Zanpakuto tightly and the muscles on his face were swaying, dazzling people. Originally, when he noticed a huge Ryatsu here, his first thought was to come and destroy the Minos Voids and wash away the shame of being defeated by Dustless. Now, he never thought that he would become the best audience to witness Dustless's strength. He felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. This kid. It seems like he didn't use his full strength that day. Unohana Retsu also put away her Zanpakuto. Her beautiful eyes were filled with light, and her calm heart was swallowed by the storm. At this moment, the ones who were the most upset were Sosuke Aizen and the others. Useless trash, he couldn't even fight back against a vice captain. It's a miracle that he has been the king of Hueco-Mundo for hundreds of years. Tozai wanted to curse, but Dustless sucked Balegan over and then bounced him away with a repulsive force. Such a funny scene was seen by Aizen, Tozai and Ikamaru Jin, who were rushing over, and they were angry. It's not that Balegan is useless. He is the famous Vasto Lord. Ikamaru Jin was not the same as before. Although his face was still very sly and frivolous, his tone was obviously filled with caution. Vasto Lord was played like a monkey. Ikamaru Jin suddenly felt that his brain was not enough, and his view of the world was turned upside down in an instant. Indeed, it's not that Balegan is weak, it's that his enemy is not in the same dimension as him. Aizen agreed with Ikamaru Jin. Vasto Lord's strength was well known, but the enemy was too strong. The situation this time is really bad. Aizen's expression was very gloomy. His eyes kept twitching as he looked at Yamamoto Unohana Retsu and Shunsui Kiraku rushing over. This was the first time in his life that he had this strange feeling. Bail Egan was currently Sosuke Aizen's most important chess piece, and he was also using him to control Hueco Mundo. But it was easier said than done to let Bail Egan go. Even Aizen, who had been calm for 100 years, couldn't help but burst into flames. He looked at Dustless with a murderous look in his eyes. Aizen's face hurt. Unknowingly, he felt like he had been slapped by Dustless. However, he couldn't say anything. Both of his plans had been ruined by this brat. Chapter 960. Bail Egan was shocked. He looked around with his skull but didn't find any trace of the Great Void. He looked at Aizen Sosuke, but the hidden big boss ignored him directly. This is the end of the surprise attack on Soul Society's ninjas. Looking around at the group of captains who were rushing over, Bailgan's bones turned black. Before he left, he glared fiercely at Dustless and quietly said, "Just wait and see." Snap. With a snap of his fingers, the void behind Bail Egan suddenly burst open, and a long and narrow dark hole appeared, and an ancient aura of decay and a strong murderous intent came from it. There was no need to think. The other side was undoubtedly Hueco Mundo. "Wanna run? You want to run away in front of so many people? What do you think Soul Society is?" The sky instantly turned bright red, burning with blazing flames. In the distance, a huge fire tornado swept over. The head captain was like a god of fire, stepping on the flames as he rushed over. Matsumoto. The tornado-shaped hot flames fell from the sky, covering Bailgan's entire body, blocking his way and limiting his range of movement to a narrow flame. Fortunately, this is Soul Society. If it was in Hueco Mundo, Yamamoto would have no scruples, and it would be difficult for him to escape death. Bail Egan, who was surrounded by flames, was calm, and his whole body erupted with aging aura, corroding the flames at a speed visible to the naked eye. The power of Ryujin Jaka was extremely powerful, terrifying enough to destroy Soul Society, but the only disadvantage was that it was too powerful, and it didn't distinguish between friend and foe. Some of the most basic moves could also severely damage Soul Society. Generally, when the captain used Ryujin Jaka, he was forced to use it or he suppressed the power to the lowest level. If it was in Hueco Mundo, maybe the furious captain would have already killed Bail Egan. Goodbye, death gods of Soul Society, I will be back in the future. Bail Egan, who had escaped from the prison, roared at the top of his lungs, and the black hole behind him connected to Hueco Mundo opened, and half of his foot stepped into it. "Bastard, how dare you!" Yamamoto's arm holding Ryujin Jaka trembled, and he couldn't wait to burst out with all his strength and kill Bail Egan instantly. Of course, the consequence of doing so is that part of Soul Society may be buried with him. Looks like he escaped. Sosuke Aizen, who had just arrived, breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the black hole that was gradually closing, his tense heart calmed down, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. Bail Egan was his most important chess piece, and it was related to the layout of Hueco Mundo. He could not afford to lose him. Aizen, who was bored, glanced left and right, inadvertently glanced at Dustless's smirk. His heart skipped a beat as he had a bad feeling. "Brat, you want to capture me alive? Unless you can also activate Black Cavity. But what a pity. This skill is unique to voids. Just open your eyes and watch me leave. You are just so weak and weak." Yeah. Bail Egan laughed unscrupulously, as if only this could dispel the depression in his heart. He touched the top of his head gloomily, and a footprint that would never disappear made him vomit blood. "I will definitely settle this debt with you in the future." Bailgan's nondescript voice was filled with the madness of perishing together. The captains all looked at the skull that was pierced through by the footprint. The mark was almost exactly the same as Dustless's right foot, and they all smiled. "In the future? Let's end it now," Dustless said lazily. Bail Egan sneered, and when he was about to mock Dustless, the world in front of him became completely dark, and the connection to the outside world was cut off. The black cavity was completely closed. "Damn brat. What is going on?" The black cavity was closed and Bail Egan was about to curse Dustless, but the void was distorted like a whirlpool, and the space was torn apart by some invisible force. Bail Egan instinctively felt something was wrong, and when he was about to turn around and enter Hueco Mundo, a powerful shout ignored the existence of the dimensional barrier and crossed the layers of space into Bailgan's ears. Kemui. There was a warm light behind him, and the incomparably dark deep space was instantly bright and warm. Bail Egan could even breathe the fresh air of Soul Society. He turned his head stiffly like a machine, and looked at the smiling Dustless. Bailgan's mouth full of fangs formed an O shape, tearing the space, creating a space-time resonance. This is one of the abilities of my Zanpakuto. Without waiting for anyone to ask, Dustless sealed their mouths with a sentence. The only people who knew that Dustless didn't have a Zanpakuto were the Zero Squad in the Spirit King Palace. This casual sentence directly petrified Bail Egan. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. An afterimage rushed out at the speed of light, and even Dustless could see a vague outline. Boom. A merciless heavy kick landed, and Bail Egan was kicked out of the torn space. His spiritual pressure erupted, and he was about to fight with all his might, but the captains surrounded him. The initiator was the captain of the second squad, Soi Feng. Clang clang clang. More than a dozen swords were drawn, and the captains pulled out their swords at the same time, staring at Bail Egan with unfriendly eyes. Soul Society was attacked by Hueco Mundo and suffered heavy losses. This king of Hueco Mundo was the culprit. Just when everyone was about to gang up on Bail Egan, a figure resolutely blocked in front of Bail Egan. It's him. What does this guy want? Frowning, Dustless began to guess the purpose of the person in front of him. Chapter 961. The person who stood up for Bail Egan was the current 5th Division Captain Sosuke Aizen. Dustless laughed inwardly. He had already guessed Aizen's intentions. He quickly came up with a plan. Captain Aizen, Bail Egan is an enemy who wants to destroy Soul Society. It's not right for you to speak up for him. Or perhaps, you were the one behind Hueco Mundo's perfect invasion. Aizen Sosuke's eyes twitched when he heard this. He almost couldn't help but raise his sword to chop this bastard who deliberately attacked him. Especially since he had exposed him in front of so many captains. After hearing Dustless's words, all the captains looked at Sosuke Aizen suspiciously. This guy suddenly stood in front of Bail Egan. It would be strange if they didn't suspect him. Vice Captain Dustless, don't speculate. Captain Aizen's loyalty to Soul Society is clear as day. Dongsing scolded angrily. Also, you're just a vice captain. How dare you criticize the captain? Who gave you the guts? Did someone order you to do this? Everyone knew how to use dirty words. Dongsing was no exception. Idiot. Sosuke Aizen was expressionless, but he was cursing in his heart. Dongsing's words were pointing at Unohana Retsu. Over the past 1,000 years, Unohua Lai's loyalty to Soul Society was well known. Sure enough, just as Aizen expected, Unohana's calm eyes rippled with displeasure. Her lips trembled slightly. Just as she was about to speak, someone else took Unohana's place to teach Dongsing a lesson. Captain Dongsing, please pay attention to your words and your status. I don't want to hear such childish words a second time. Yamamoto's tone was filled with dissatisfaction. Unohana Retsu had fought with him for 1,000 years. Her loyalty to Soul Society was unquestionable. I'm sorry, Captain Unohana. I misspoke, Sir Head Captain. Realizing that something was wrong, East Deity hurriedly apologized humbly. Deputy Captain Wuchen, this is not a place where a deputy captain like you can meddle in. Seeing that his good friend was being reprimanded, Zhou Xian's Zhen immediately stood up and pointed the spearhead at Wuchen. No wonder this big idiot was used. Dustless glanced at Sakumura with pity, but he was too lazy to pay attention to him. He looked straight at Aizen Sosuke. This guy was inexplicably covering up for Bailey, so he was definitely up to no good. Chinkun is right. Captain Aizen should give a reasonable explanation. Unohana Retsu smiled and supported Dustless. Of course. I will give you a reasonable explanation. Aizen replied calmly. After organizing his words, he continued. As you all know, Bail Egan is the king of Hueco Mundo. Imprisoning him is far more valuable than killing him. Aizen raised his eyebrows and continued. Even if we kill Bail Egan, Hueco Mundo will give birth to another king. Why don't we just control him and use him? The king of Hueco Mundo will give him face. I agree. I need a greater void to conduct experiments. It's not convenient to enter Hueco Mundo. With the king of Hueco Mundo's help, It'll be much easier to capture experimental materials. Mayuri laughed. I don't agree. Someone suddenly said. Dustless opened his mouth and organized his thoughts to attack Aizen. However, someone had stolen his script, and it was someone he never expected. Captain Withered, what do you think is inappropriate? Aizen didn't get angry. He always had a nice face. This had become a habit of his. No matter who or what he faced, he always had a smile on his face. Wuchen looked at Shimu Baya in surprise. He swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth and continued to close his eyes calmly. We're Shinigami and he's the king of Hueco Mundo. Byakuya said briefly as if every word was valuable. He didn't want to say more. I also agree with Captain Xiaomu's point of view. With the powerful Vasto Lord in Soul Society, even if Captain Ye can develop a tool to limit Bailey's spiritual pressure, I don't think it's safe. This is a blasphemy to the death gods who died in Hueco Mundo. Unohana raised her voice and wrinkled her nose. She was very dissatisfied with Aizen's suggestion. This old guy is just stalling for time. When the time is right, he'll probably let Beigen go. Dustless looked at Aizen from the corner of his eyes. He understood Aizen's intentions. Aizen needed to use his identity as the king of Hueco Mundo to manage Hueco Mundo, so he couldn't afford to lose him. He couldn't go to Hueco Mundo to be the king. He didn't have the time and he didn't have the conditions. He might be able to in the future, but not now. You want to protect Beigen? Stop dreaming, silly child. No matter how hard you try, he'll die and he'll die in front of you. Dustless sneered in his heart. Yamamoto also had a headache. The captains were clearly divided into two factions. He didn't know which side they supported. How about this? Sosuke Aizen's tone was filled with absolute rationality, making people involuntarily believe him, but when it fell on Dustless's ears, it was very strange with a hint of conspiracy. How about we let the Central 46 Sages decide? Chapter 962. Central Room 46 was the organization with the highest authority in Soul Society. Even the Gotii 13 had to obey their orders. No one could go against their will. This guy. Could it be that he's already taken out Central Room 46 and is using his mirror's image ability to confuse the captains? Seeing Aizen so confident, Dustless guessed. Then he said to himself, unfortunately it's useless. No matter how hard you try, it's futile. That old man Beigen will die. Dustless didn't care. He was determined to kill Beigen, and there was no way he was going to let him go. He turned his head and avoided everyone's gaze, and his eyes began to change. His left eye was purple and there were 9 mysterious tomo in it. It was Rinnegan. Wheel grave, border prison. In the invisible world, a shadow that looked exactly like Dustless walked out and walked in front of Beigen. No one could detect his presence. In order to ensure that everything went smoothly and he could kill Beigen without leaving a single trace behind, the shadow still held a pitch-black iron rod in his hand. It was condensed from the yin-yang escape. In that case, we will let Central Room 46 make the decision. Yamamoto waved his hand. Hearing this, Aizen bowed and thanked Yamamoto. He then asked Byakuya, Captain Byakuya, what do you think? Let them decide. Byakuya's answer was always so simple. Unohana Retsu looked at Aizen and had no choice but to agree. All the captains agreed. Even if she disagreed, it would be useless. However, from today onwards, Aizen gave Unohana a new understanding of him. Unohana Retsu didn't know how to describe it, but it was completely different from before. When she saw Aizen, she couldn't help but be on guard. Good. Aizen sighed in relief. Just as he was about to think about the next step of his plan, a shadow that he didn't want to see came out to disgust him. I have an opinion. Dustless said calmly. The 4 simple words attracted everyone's attention. East Senpai's expression suddenly became cold, and the Zanpakuto in his hand was unsheathed. He knew that Dustless did it on purpose. You intend to question the credibility of Central Room 46? Keiki Baya opened his eyes and asked in an unfriendly manner. As a noble, he was rather stubborn. That's not it. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head and immediately said, after Bailgang imprisons Soul Society, what should he do? A grand void like Vasto Lord is not easy to deal with. We can't just send 2 or 3 captains around him all the time, can we? I thought it would be a big deal. When the time comes, I'll just develop a tool to restrict him. Mayuri shrugged and said casually. Not bad. Aizen agreed and immediately volunteered. Although my strength is weak, with Captain Ye's tool, Baelgan's strength will be greatly reduced. For the sake of Soul Society, I am willing to guard him. Aizen's words flattered Mayuri without leaving a trace. He also put himself on the moral high ground. He deserved the title of Best Actor. However, what happened next made Sasuke Aizen dumbfounded. Not only him but all the captains were stunned. Bastard, what did you do to me? Come and save me. Baelgan screamed when he noticed the abnormality in his body. At this moment his body was strangely collapsing. His skeleton turned into fragments and slowly fell to the ground. Immediately, under everyone's astonished gaze, the peeled bones disappeared with the wind. His body inexplicably collapsed. He didn't receive any attack, but he turned into ashes. Don't get close to him. Old man Yamamoto's expression turned cold as he instinctively felt a sense of danger. His gaze immediately swept past the captains and finally landed on Wuxian. This has nothing to do with me. He saw it too. He was fine just now. Wuxian had an indifferent and aloof appearance. He immediately drew a clear line between them. Then he said sternly, "The evils we bring upon ourselves are the hardest to bear." Baelgan offended too many people in his life and fought countless battles. Maybe his hidden disease suddenly broke out and killed him. Although this reason was a bit far-fetched, it happened from time to time. This is impossible. Aizen finally couldn't maintain his smile. He looked at Baelgan's body that was gradually disappearing. He almost vomited blood. Such an important chess piece died so inexplicably. How could he be calm? Aizen's face was pale. He had fought with Baelgan before and knew his physical condition. He had never heard of a great void expert dying from a hidden disease. This kind of death was too ridiculous. This is outrageous. Dustless suddenly gritted his teeth. Captain Aizen just said he would guard Baelgan, but he suddenly died. God didn't give him face. This is his own sin. Baelgan has killed too many Grim Reapers. This is the right ending. He's completely caught in his own trap. Aizen immediately forced a smile and replied. His heart was twitching. He was smart. Of course, he knew Dustless's words were a disguised sarcasm. It was useless to mock him. He was rubbing salt on his scars. Chapter 963. The head captain was expressionless. In fact, Baelgan's death was in line with his wishes. The Grim Reaper was the Grim Reaper and the Void was the Void. There was no need to do something as trivial as imprisoning Bailey. This matter ends here. Don't discuss it in the future. The head captain's tone was firm, and there was no room for disobedience. Aizen could only grit his teeth and nod. Without Baelgan's deterrence, Hueco Mundo would soon fall into a bloodbath. Aizen glanced at Dustless and then looked away. This grudge had been settled. Dustless, who had been observing Aizen's expression the whole time, noticed it. He just smiled. It was inevitable. Anyway, he didn't care. The invasion this time is over. Raising his eyebrows, old man Yamamoto's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he looked at the messy Soul Society. He suddenly felt that it was a pity to let Baelgan die without beating him up. Within half a month, all the teams must resume normal operations. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The efficiency of Soul Society was extremely high. Although it was said to take half a month, under the circumstances of full mobilization, Soul Society only needed a few days to walk out of the shadow of Hueco Mundo's attack and recover to its current state. This sudden war, if one were to talk about who benefited the most, it was none other than Dustless. He gained both fame and fortune, and his captain-level strength was also confirmed. Even Wuxian could sense that the members of the second division who usually monitored him had also disappeared. No matter what, old man Yamamoto reluctantly trusted Dustless. In the 4th Division's quarters, in front of the mirror, Dustless was wearing a brand new outfit. He twisted his waist in discomfort, feeling a little awkward. He was not used to wearing the Grim Reaper's Death Tyrant outfit. Clothes make the man and gold make the Buddha. Although Wuxian felt a little restrained, he was indeed a little different from the past when he wore the Death Tyrant suit. His delicate and bright eyes were bright and full of spirit. Accompanied by the dark Death Tyrant suit, he looked funny and gave people a feeling of extra vigor. Not bad, Unohana commented after observing for a while. Just not bad. Shudora Thousand-Hand Maru glanced at Unohana Retsu and did not hide his dissatisfaction. I spent 10 hours to make this. Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but curl his lips. Making the Death Tyrant outfit in 10 hours was definitely a rough product without any skill. You brat, don't be so unappreciative. Even if other people ask me to act like a dead tyrant, I still have to think about it. Shidoro stomped his feet in annoyance as he glared at Dustless in annoyance. By the way, Lai, have you noticed it recently? She changed the topic of conversation and frowned. She didn't want to banter with Dustless, so she spoke cautiously. Unohua Lai's expression also became abnormally solemn. The Street of Drifting Souls has indeed encountered some problems recently. Many souls have disappeared. Many of the death gods in Quiet Soul Society have also mysteriously disappeared. Hearing this, Dustless remained expressionless as if nothing had happened, but his heart was as clear as a mirror. They were probably captured by Aizen to make the Hogyoku. Thinking about the mysterious existence of the Hogyoku, Dustless's heart was burning with passion. His heart that had been sealed for so many years actually had a rare desire for it. The Hogyoku at the very beginning was actually used to break the boundary between Hollow and Shinigami, and to evolve a whole new dimension. Actually, the Hogyoku's true power was to develop the person's heart according to their wishes. But the condition was that the person had to have the strength to make that wish come true. In simpler words, it was a heaven-defying existence that could make anything happen. That kind of thing is not something that ordinary people like Aizen deserve. Only I can control it. With Dustless's current strength, if he fused with the Hogyoku, his strength would increase explosively, and he would break through the Shinigami's boundary. He would not be comparable to Aizen, who was in the late stage of Hogyoku. The stronger the host's mentality, the more the Hogyoku would evolve. Dustless's ideals and ambitions were far beyond Aizen's, so naturally he would not stop at his level. Team Zero has already decided to investigate further. After a while, Shidoro Senjumaru said something shocking. The mysterious disappearance of souls was not a small matter, and it would cause imbalance. Back then, the Grim Reaper and Quincy fought because Quincy kept hunting Void. The Grim Reaper purified Void while the Grim Reaper killed Void. The Grim Reaper killed Void to purify Void while Void killed Void completely. As time passed, the two sides disagreed and a war broke out. I helped you this time as a reward for the Hogyoku in the future. Dustless smiled and explained to Unohana Retsu and Shidoro Senjumaru. The reason for the mysterious disappearance of souls is related to the invasion of Hueco Mundo. At that time, many souls were cruelly eaten by Jillian. Are you sure? Shidoro Senjumaru asked suspiciously. Again, what good would it do me to lie to you? Dustless stretched and continued. If you don't believe me, you can ask Yong-in. He was also there at that time. The souls of Rughun Street and many Shinigami were either eaten or killed. Back then, many Grim Reapers had witnessed this scene with their own eyes. Dustless naturally had nothing to fear. Chapter 964. When Dustless, Kazuto and the others arrived at the 80th district of Drifting Soul Street, they happened to see a large group of Jillian hunting souls. Many Shinigami saw this scene. They just needed to ask around a little. Shiro Senjumaru's face that was as bright as jade was filled with suspicion. His gentle gaze instantly became incomparably awe-inspiring. He stared at Wu Chen without blinking. After a long while, he saw that Wu Chen's expression was natural and didn't seem to be lying. His sharp gaze then calmed down. I hope you're not lying. Dustless said with certainty. Of course I'm not lying. You guys know that the Hollow favors the souls of Shinigami. Why would they need to lie about this? That's true. Shiro Thousand Hand Maru and Unohana Retsu could not deny that. The Shinigami had always been a delicacy for the Hollow. Most of the time they would be eaten. The soul of the Shinigami was a great tonic for the Hollow. Unohana Retsu and Shiro Thousand Hand Maru were quite familiar with each other. The two of them chatted happily for a while. They even ignored Dustless, who was beside them. That's right. I almost forgot something important. Shiro Thousand Hand Maru suddenly remembered the important matter of coming to Soul Society this time. Her strange gaze fell on Dustless again. Something? Dustless, who was drinking tea alone, noticed Shiro Thousand Hand Maru's strange behavior and asked curiously. He was also a little speechless at this woman who was so flustered. It's more than just something. You can seriously injure Bailey. Soul Society will have a hard time ignoring you in the future. Shoutoro Senjumaru liked to be straightforward, so he was too lazy to talk nonsense. His eyes flashed non-stop, and after pondering for a moment he said, Let me introduce myself first. I am from Squad 0. I know you're called Shuro Thousand Hand Maru. Get to the point. Dustless waved his hand. He did not expect Shuro Thousand Hand Maru to introduce herself. He began to guess her motive. Could it be, they want to pull me into Squad 0? Following that, Shidoro's words confirmed Dustless's conjecture. Squad 0 is responsible for guarding the Spirit King Palace and ensuring the safety of the Spirit King. They will only appear when there is a great calamity in Soul Society. I came here with another order, and that is to invite you to join Squad 0. Staring straight into Dustless's eyes, Shidoro Senjumaru spoke bluntly. Puchi. Her stomach churned violently, and the tea that had poured into her lungs directly sprayed out. If it wasn't for the Shidoro Thousand Hand Pill's agility, it might have even hit her face. What do you mean? Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru asked as he pursed his thin lips and revealed a soul-stirring smile. The only difference was that when the beauty smiled, what blossomed was a burst of chilling laughter. Sorry, I'm not interested in joining the Zero Squad. Dustless smiled embarrassedly and immediately refused. He was used to being free. If he suddenly ran to a sealed space and lived a life worse than death, he would be looking for trouble. You just want to use my strength to protect the Spirit King. Dustless was as clear as a mirror. He clearly remembered that the former captain of the 11th Division, Kenpachi Kiya, was once invited by Squad 0. The reason was that he had defeated Vasto Lord like Dustless, and thus his strength was recognized by Squad 0. However, Kenpachi Kiya rejected Squad 0. Just like Dustless today, joining Squad 0 meant that he would completely lose his freedom. You don't want to reconsider? Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru's dark and deep eyebrows squeezed together. His words were filled with persuasion and temptation. Squad 0's conditions are much better than Soul Society. Era. You are trying to trick my vice-captain. Senjumaru. Squad 0 is no exception to this. Unohana Retsu came out to disrupt the situation. Dustless was speechless. He was not a child, how could he be tricked? Compared to the boring Zero Squad, I still prefer Soul Society. Repeating himself, Dustless said with absolute certainty. His stance was incomparably firm. The existence of Squad 0 and related information is top secret. If you refuse, will you be silenced? Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru smiled faintly, like a deadly poppy flower, brimming with murderous intent. At the same time, she released dense murderous intent and spiritual pressure that was far more terrifying than Vasto Lord's, indicating that she was not joking. If you can try. Facing the spiritual pressure of Mount Tai, his body felt as if there were a few mountains pressing down on him. However, Dustless's expression did not change. He even played with his fingers in boredom. He was extremely calm. You don't even know how to trick people. Dustless disagreed. The existence of Squad 0 was top secret? It was just a lie. In reality, most of the captains knew about Squad 0. Even Wuxia knew about the royal family's spy. In reality, even if they knew about the existence of the Spirit King Palace and Squad 0, there was nothing they could do. Spirit King Palace was not a place that could be entered as they wished. Other than being led by Squad 0, or learning from Aizen Sasuke's King's Key, there was no other way. Of course they could learn from Yaoch. This kid is really troublesome. Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru was having a headache. Dustless was someone who did not yield to force or persuasion. He was extremely difficult to deal with. Looking at his eyes that seemed to have everything under his control, she felt that he was even harder to deal with than Vasto Lord. Vasto Lord was also full of flaws. On the other hand, Dustless's strength was unfathomable. He was also cunning and full of tricks. Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru felt like she was being led by the nose by Dustless. However, she could not voice out her bitterness. After another half an hour, Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru left secretly. Dustless also followed Unohana Retsu to learn Shinigami's fighting style. Since he came to this world, he had to learn Shinigami's fighting style. Chapter 965. Time flew by quickly and half a year had passed in the blink of an eye. For normal humans, half a year might be a long time, but death gods had no concept of time. Their lifespans were tens of times longer than humans, perhaps even longer. Two sharp explosions sounded from the spacious area. Looking over, the two black figures were Dustless and Unohana Retsu. At first, Dustless was very confused about spiritual pressure, but as Unohana Retsu explained it to him, he understood what it was. As long as the heart was still beating, there would be spiritual pressure overflowing. In reality, it was like chakra, but it was even simpler than chakra as there was no need for hand seals. Path of Destruction 33, Fall of Blue Flames. After the spiritual pressure in his body gathered, the boundless explosive flames left his hand and blasted towards the figure in front of him. And the person who activated Path of Destruction 33 was Dustless. Because he was a 10-tailed beast, Dustless' stats in almost every aspect were top-notch, including the soul, which he was not good at. As such, the moment he released his spiritual pressure was no weaker than a captain's spiritual pressure, and it might even surpass it. Now that half a year had passed, Dustless was able to control his spiritual pressure with ease. Path of Destruction 54, Waste Flames. With a delicate shout, a pink disk of flames shot out. It was like a blade that emitted a blazing cold light. It effortlessly sliced apart the explosive flame that was attacking them. Not only that, it also rushed towards Dustless. Seeing this, Dustless's gaze froze and a scorching light condensed in his palm. Crackling sounds could be heard, followed by an explosion of light that pierced through the air. Path of Destruction 63, Thunder Roar Cannon. The two contrasting lights inevitably came into close contact with each other. Immediately, an imposing and dazzling light burst out, and the temperature increased by a few times in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. The situation was almost completely one-sided. The rioting teardrops easily tore apart the shattered halos and did not slow down in the slightest. Instead, they continued to rampage towards Unohana. What a monster! Unohua sighed with mixed feelings after sensing how extraordinary Dao Breaker number 63 was. Her tone was somewhat sour, as if she was jealous of Wu Chen's boundless spiritual pressure. Even if an ordinary Dao Breaker of the lowest level was injected with a large amount of spiritual pressure, its power would still increase by a whole new dimension. This was the case for Wu Chen. Unohua Lai did not have much spiritual pressure, at least not as much as Dustless, so she focused more on the way of the sword. Plang, plang, plang. Her slender fingers gripped the hilt of the sword. The moment she pulled out the sword, it was filled with an indescribable aura. It was a visual impact of turning something rotten into something magical. Unohua Lai's gentle gaze instantly turned cold. Puchi. The cold light was so weak that it was almost negligible. It was extremely fragile, as if it could be extinguished with a flick of a finger. However, in Unohana's hands, it immediately performed a miracle, shattering the incoming lightning and splitting it in half, allowing it to pass by her side. The first generation, Sword 8. Is indeed not for show. Wu Chen's eyes lit up. He had never seen anyone who could compare with Unohua Lai's swordsmanship. Her swordsmanship had almost reached the pinnacle of perfection. Hell butterfly. Did something big happen in Soul Society again? The black butterfly suddenly landed on his shoulder, and the surging chakra in Dustless's body also calmed down. It was not just him. Unohua Lai also had the same butterfly on her shoulder. Dustless took a deep breath. He knew that today's short training session would end here. His eyes lit up. Although he did not know what was going on, he could tell that something was not right. Normally, the captains would attend the meetings. However, this time, Dustless had used the hell butterfly to inform him. This meant that the scale of the meeting had obviously increased, which also meant that the situation was different from before. Otherwise, Head Captain Yamamoto would not have called them the vice captains. Soul Society's captain meetings were usually held by the head captain's team, and this time was no exception. Old man Yamamoto sat calmly in his seat. The 2 rows of captains did not dare to make a sound or show any dissatisfaction. The man in front of them was the founder of Soul Society. Without him, there would be no Soul Society, no Shinigami, and no Quiet Soul Society. The blue sky of Soul Society was created by him alone. It was easy to imagine how high his prestige was. This is the latest order from the Central Room 46. Head Captain Yamamoto glanced at his vice captain, Sparrow Division. The latter then took out a thick stack of documents and handed them to all the captains and vice captains. Thank you, Vice Captain of Sparrow Division. Dustless took the documents filled with words and thanked him. Glancing at the contents, Dustless sneered in his heart. An order from the Central Room 46? I think it's more like an order from Aizen Sosuke. After glancing at Aizen and his loyal dog, Dustless calmed down and began to read the documents. The content made him a little sluggish. What does this mean? Even if there's trouble in creating the Hogyoku, there's no need to make such a big fuss. Frowning, Dustless's eyes flickered. He stared at Aizen and began to think about his intentions. He instinctively smelled a conspiracy. Chapter 966. The contents of the document were rather cumbersome. The first part was mostly nonsense. The content was the same, praising the Gotii 13's loyalty to Soul Society. The real order was only a few words at the end. Capture the captains who once betrayed Soul Society and wandered the modern world. Capture them alive. Has this guy already lost his mind to this extent? Does he plan to capture them and take them back to Soul Society for experiments? This was the only reason Dustless could think of. Aizen, the smiling tiger, would definitely do something like live experiments. In addition, the creation of Hogyoku required a Shinigami's soul. The higher the level, the better. A captain-level Shinigami's soul was perfect. Ordinary Shinigami would be swallowed by Hogyoku's power and lose their sense of self. Is the information reliable? Didn't the previous captains all die? Jin pretended to be surprised. Dustless rolled his eyes. He was there when Aizen tried to kill the former captains. Now he was acting like he didn't know anything. How shameless. Captain Jin is right. I didn't expect Captain Hirako to still be alive. I owe him a lot. Unfortunately, he went astray. Aizen said sadly. Keep pretending. Dustless was speechless. Aizen's eyes were shining and he looked like he was about to cry. Suddenly he felt that he had been too incompetent when it came to scheming. He couldn't be as good as Aizen and he almost burst into tears. No matter what, since the Central 46 sent Soul Society to capture them, we have no reason to let them go. After all, they have a lot to do with Hueco Mundo. Maybe they were the ones who ordered Bailey to invade Soul Society. Leaning on his crutch, he knocked on the ground. The captains tactfully shut their mouths. Yamamoto Genryu Ma Shiguko resolutely said, "We must capture them and bring them to justice." Due to Aizen's framing, Hirako Masako and the others were deemed to be closely related to Hueco Mundo and became wanted criminals of Soul Society. However, thanks to Urahara Kisuke's assistance, they were able to successfully escape from Soul Society. Those guys are strong. There are several captains and many former vice captains. We need to be careful. Otherwise we might fail. I don't understand. Even if they are alive, they should be very low-key. Why do we have to poke a hornet's nest? Did those guys in Central Room 46 think that we're too comfortable, so they deliberately gave us some work to do? Jingle Chunshue, who was lazy by nature, ridiculed. Regarding this kind of boring, unrewarding and very dangerous mission, he was 100 times unwilling. However, the biggest reason was that among the so-called traitors who colluded with Hueco Mundo, there were his close friends and confidants who could barely be considered his confidant. Let nature take its course. Wuxian was calmly cultivating his mind and temperament. He was silent. Aizen was the one who planned all of this. His goal was to capture these Shinigami who were supposed to be dead, but were still alive and could control the void form. After capturing them and bringing them back to Soul Society, they wouldn't be sentenced. Instead, they would be treated as guinea pigs by Aizen. We do need to make reasonable preparations. If they are alive, they are indeed a great enemy. Yamamoto's two white eyebrows were almost squeezed together. His tone was solemn. This mission will be led by Captain Yasushi, Captain Ikamaru, Captain Jin, Captain Shunsui, and... Old man Yamamoto looked around and finally fixed his eyes on Dustless. He remembered how Dustless had defeated the king of Hueco Mundo, Bail Egan, half a year ago. A strange light flashed in his turbid eyes. Vice Captain Dustless, you should go this time too. No problem. Dustless was startled at first, but then he agreed without hesitation. The Hogyoku would be his in the end anyway. Helping Aizen was the same as helping himself. The peace of Soul Society needs you young people. Dustless's straightforwardness was beyond Yamamoto's expectation. He immediately smiled. Compared to Shunsui, who only complained and didn't do anything, Dustless was more pleasing to the eye. It's strange. How did Aizen know that they are still alive and in the modern world? It doesn't make sense. Dustless's heart was filled with doubts. Back then, Urahara Kisuke had secretly rescued Hirako Masako and the others and escaped to the modern world. Other than Dustless, who was an invader who had transmigrated, perhaps no one else knew about it. For decades, the masked legion had been hiding quietly. But now, Aizen suddenly ordered the Gotiai 13 to exterminate the masked legion. The source of this information had to be questioned. Forget it, let's take one step at a time. Dustless couldn't find any clues after thinking for a long time. There were too many unsolved mysteries in the world. There was no need to dwell on it. It's not like I didn't get anything this time. That unlucky bastard Yanqing is also in this mission. I'll find a chance to kill him and become the captain of the 11th Division, Wuchen planned in his heart. He looked at Yen Ghost Yanqing and happened to see Yen Ghost Yanqing gnashing his teeth. He looked like he was going to swallow Wuchen alive. Jinkun, be careful in this mission. The enemy is strong, but you have to be careful of your own people. Unohua moved closer to Wuchen. Her delicate red lips exuded a fragrance, reminding Wuchen to be wary of her own people. Thank you, Captain Unohana. I will be careful. Dustless smiled and thanked her sincerely. Even though Unohana Retsu's worries were unnecessary, Dustless still accepted them all. After all, the only person in Soul Society who cared about Dustless was Unohana Retsu. Chapter 967. Unohana Retsu didn't even need to think about the person she was talking about. The only person who fit the criteria was the captain of the 11th Division, Kenpachi Ghost Yanqing. The hatred between Dustless and him was the type that couldn't be resolved. Kenpachi Ghost Yanqing is a narrow-minded man. He won't let you go if he finds an opportunity. What Unohua Lai said was not false. He had a keen eye for people. With just a single glance she could tell what kind of person they were. Kenpachi Ghost Yanqing wasn't a kind person. He had a ferocious appearance and a cunning heart. There's no such thing as an absolute hunter and prey. This kind of situation is always changing. If you don't pay attention, you'll become someone else's meal. Dustless said casually. I hope so. Unohana Retsu looked deeply at Dustless and didn't say anything else. She was smart enough to understand what Dustless meant. If he encountered Kenpachi Ghost Yanqing, Dustless wouldn't show any mercy. Okay, today's meeting is over. What else does anyone have to say? Yamamoto said tiredly. He was over 2,000 years old, so his stamina was far from these young sprouts. Captain Aizen is very strong. His Zanpakuto Sujutsu can confuse the enemy. With Captain Aizen's participation, this mission will be a success. Dustless stood up and said. He didn't hesitate to drag Aizen down with him. He might be plotting something in Soul Society. Sosuke Aizen's heart trembled when he heard this. Of course he had other things to do. He looked gloomily at Dustless, trying to maintain a smile. He quickly explained, Captain Aizen can indeed participate in this mission. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it later. Or leave it for your vice-captain. You'll head to the modern world in one day. The captain slammed the table and decided. He didn't give Aizen a chance to argue. Today's meeting is over. We'll talk about other things after the mission is over. Dustless's words sealed Aizen's path of retreat. Aizen's plan was ruined by Dustless's sudden interruption. Originally, he planned to use this short period of time to head to Hueco Mundo. After Balagan's death, he needed a new king of Hueco Mundo to maintain Hueco Mundo's rule. Now that Dustless had jumped out to mess things up, they had no choice but to rush to the modern world to face the masked legion. This damned brat, I'll find a chance to teach him a lesson. Although Aizen still had the same gentle smile on his face, the fire in his heart was off the charts. Ever since Dustless appeared, everything went well for him. Especially Dustless. Whenever Aizen thought that his plan was a success, he would, coincidentally, jump out and play the role of a troublemaker. Unknowingly, he was beaten by Dustless. Whether it was intentional or not, Aizen had already sentenced Dustless to death. The only pity was that he didn't have the right opportunity to do it. A day passed in the blink of an eye. The captains who had been waiting for a long time also came to the modern world through the portal. The modern world's Kongzucho was charming. It was completely different from the ancient Soul Society. The city had a different kind of charm. Urahara Kisuk's house. When the captains left the modern world, he received the exact news. You didn't call us here for a party, did you? I can't believe you're so generous. In a fragrant room there were all kinds of food. The members of the masked legion gathered here and looked at the dazzling array of food. Their leader, Hirako Masako, was already drooling. I'm not the stingy merchant you said I was. I'm just shy of money. Urahara Kisuk, who was dressed strangely, took out a fan to cover his face, only revealing a pair of smiling eyes. And this may be our last meal. Of course we have to take out all our savings. As soon as these words fell, the originally joyous atmosphere became incomparably awkward and heavy. What do you mean? Did Soul Society find our traces? Hirako Masako retracted his chopsticks and looked at Urahara Kisuke with a puzzled expression. This middle-aged man with a wretched smile was definitely not as casual and cynical as he looked. In fact, he was meticulous and did things flawlessly. There is accurate news that the captains of Soul Society have all been dispatched. Although the purpose is not clear for the time being, it seems that other than us fugitives, no one can make Soul Society mobilize so many people. Urahara Kisuke's smiling eyes were filled with seriousness as he said bluntly. How did Soul Society find our traces? Over the years we've been very low-key and rarely show up. Hirako Masako and others asked in unison, showing deep confusion. I don't know the specific situation. I only know that this was an order from Central Room 46. I'm afraid it was instigated by Aizen. Although it was just a guess, Urahara Kisuke was very sure. I believe you don't want to be caught, nor do you want to return to Soul Society. So, we can only fight with our backs against the river. Although Soul Society is aggressive, it's not like we have no chance of winning. At the same time, several extremely powerful spiritual pressures suddenly appeared, and the momentum swept across Kongzucho looking for the masked legion. A battle of life and death was about to begin. Chapter 968. In Urahara Kisuke's shop, the faces of the masked legion gathered here were ugly. This huge Ryatsu couldn't be a lie, it was obviously captain level. They even recognized the Ryatsu of some people. Bang! Terashinko's face trembled. He smashed the table in front of him with his fist. His intestines were green with regret. He was the one who noticed Aizen's danger and purposely pulled him into the 5th Division as a vice-captain. His original intention was to secretly monitor Aizen's Sosuke, but in the end he was tricked by Aizen. So in today's situation, it was as difficult as ascending to the sky to remedy it. That damn Aizen. The hot-tempered Nishiori was the first to lose her temper. She carried her serrated broadsword and rushed out of the door, shouting in exasperation, "It must be Aizen's doing. That bastard took an inch and wanted a mile. I'm going to chop him up and make sure he can't be a man for the rest of his life." Stop her. Terashinko was shocked when he saw this. He knew Nishiori's temperament. She wasn't the kind of person who would act without thinking. He immediately reached out to grab her, but she easily dodged. Bang! Terashinko, who lost his support, fell to the ground, his face intimately touching the ground. His nose was red and swollen with some traces of blood. Damn it, it hurts. This group of people. Urahara Kisuke's face turned black. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This group of people gave him a deeper understanding of their unreliability. At the same time he began to think about how to deal with Soul Society. A little carelessness this time may lead to eternal damnation. The sky was clear and there were several figures standing in the sky. It was particularly eye-catching. Lord Yamamoto, Kozuke is so big and they deliberately hide their Ryatsu. Where are we going to find them? Shunsui complained like a young wife who was angry but didn't dare to speak, full of resentment. It was quite funny. Wuchen watched quietly and kept silent like a stone. He wasn't familiar with these captains and didn't have any interaction with them. There was no need for him to curry favor with them and bring disgrace upon himself. Am I seeing things? He actually came out of his own accord. After a few minutes of silence, a surprised exclamation attracted the attention of all the captains. Then the mysterious voice continued as if it was talking to itself. Everyone's spiritual pressure content and density are extremely shocking. It seems that there is even great void realm spiritual pressure mixed in. Upon hearing this, all the captains turned their heads and looked towards the source. Everyone's gazes were not focused on those mysterious black dots that were swiftly rushing over. It was dustless. This guy actually discovered it before we did. All the captains exchanged glances and they could all see the astonishment and shock in each other's eyes. He was just a mere vice-captain, yet his perception was so terrifying. It would have been fine if they had been careless just now, but the key point was that all of them had been focused, and Dustless had discovered the enemy's tracks before them. How could they not be shocked? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom boom boom. A sharp roar resounded in the sky within a radius of 10 miles. The sky instantly turned red, as demonic as blood, permeating with a deadly pressure. Everyone could smell the scent of death. Looking up, several spheres that could be called Vastolord's void flashes were heading towards them. The void flash. Everyone retreat. Sensing the extraordinary flashes, Xianxia's eyelids twitched, and he immediately ordered loudly. He also quickly used Flash Step to escape. There were about 10 void flashes, and their strength was at least equivalent to Ajucha's level voids. No one could treat it as a joke. However, there were exceptions to everything. Today they had completely witnessed what was called a miracle. Retreat quickly. After retreating 10 miles, the spiritual pressure under Xianxia's feet finally stopped. Suddenly realizing that there was one person missing, he quickly glanced over and was surprised to see Dustless in a daze, as if he had just fallen asleep, standing in the same place with a hazy face. Get out of there quickly. The power of dozens of void flashes is enough to blast Kongzucho. Although Xianxia reminded him immediately, what should have happened could not be avoided. Boom boom boom. The power of dozens of void flashes was beyond the captain's imagination. The Kongzucho below was instantly blasted flat, and an unprecedented crater appeared. Even the captains who parachuted in the modern world, although they had already evacuated the central area, were still affected by the airwaves. It was as if they were slapped in the face and their faces hurt. If Soul Society's Nirvana cocoon had not already done something to Kongzucho, the entire Kongzucho would have disappeared from the map with just this. Serves him right. A little vice-captain dares to come out and show off. Is there no one left in Soul Society? They actually sent such a pitiful and unlucky guy. Witnessing such an exaggerated attack, Shiki laughed in high spirits. Ever since she was ruthlessly framed by Soul Society, her feelings for Soul Society had also disappeared. Next should be, the pitiful and unlucky guy you mentioned. It can't be me, right? Beside Shiki, a gorgeous flash suddenly appeared. It was not as dazzling as the sun, but was very gentle and peaceful, making people involuntarily relax their vigilance. Then a delicate and unscathed face condensed again. Sorry, the unlucky vice-captain you said should have died has revived again. Seeing this, Rishiki's eyes widened and her expression was blank. Unscathed? I clearly hit you. Yes, I must be dreaming. Rishiki muttered to herself absent-mindedly. She raised her hand with a dull expression, as if she wanted to give herself a slap to wake herself up from her dream. Chapter 969. Dustless couldn't help but laugh. This little blonde loli with a face full of freckles had a unique charm, especially when she raised her delicate hand to slap him. Dustless's face was full of mischief as he looked at Shiri expectantly. Boom boom boom. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared in the distant sky, and a straight beam of light blasted towards him. Hado number 63 Thunder Roar Cannon. The flash of light was like a golden spear, and its sharp tip was enough to penetrate any material. Even if the captain-level Grim Reaper didn't die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. This kind of boring, useless and exhausting attack should be used less in the future. Looking over, his dark pupils landed on the masked blonde man with yellow hair and a strange smile on his face. He had a sloppy look. He wore a white bone mask on half of his face, similar to Great Void, and there was residual void spiritual pressure all over his body. His murderous aura was also cold and ruthless, no different from Void. Bang! The golden spear easily penetrated Dustless, who didn't dodge, and destroyed him. However, there wasn't the expected separation of his body, nor the miserable appearance of his body being burnt. Dustless, who was attacked, just turned into thousands of photons swaying lazily in the air. Then, under everyone's shocked gaze, his body reformed again. This guy, what kind of monster is he? When did such a character appear in Soul Society? Tera Masako's face stiffened and was replaced by shock. His heart trembled fiercely as he looked at Dustless, who was completely unscathed after being pierced by Tao Breaker 63. His impassioned heart of wanting to take revenge on Soul Society fell to the bottom of the valley. A far-fetched idea popped up in his mind. Could it be that this guy can ignore physical attacks? Don't worry about him, Shiri, leave quickly. Sensing the danger from Dustless's cold eyes, Tera Masako's heart turned cold. He quickly shouted at Shiri, who was still in a daze. What are you daydreaming about? Quickly retreat. Wanna run? That's fine, but leave something behind first, at least let me collect some interest. Dustless sneered. Immediately, a demonic low voice resounded through the sky. In midair, A visible ripple surged and locked on all the members of the masked army. Dustless would not choose to remain silent after being attacked by one or two waves of people. His face was aloof and cold. There was no emotion in his indifferent eyes. People of different paths couldn't make plans together. Wuxian wouldn't choose to say much to this group of masked men. The two sides originally belonged to two different worlds. The spiritual pressure in his body surged, like an erupting stormy sea. It was uncontrollable. A thick flash condensed in his palm. The final target was the members of the Masquerade Society. Daobreaker 88 Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. A huge beam of light, of the world of the world of the world of the world. It was as if it could destroy the whole world. The space trembled slightly and was even distorted horribly. The high-density light beam was as fast as lightning. In the unseen world, one could hear a loud dragon's roar, revealing a kind of heart-palpitating energy wave. Everyone could smell the scent of death. This guy, he must have done it on purpose. This bastard must be a captain. He deliberately took off the captain's haori to bait me. Indignant and unhappy voices rang out from the crowd of the maskers. Like a willful child, they fixed their eyes on the past. It was the same in the past. Leave it to me. Looking at the incoming beam of light, the former vice-captain of the Path of Keto, Zhou Xian, said. At this moment, his face was full of confidence and his eyes were shining. Heaven's pride, iron wall, dragon's roar, lion's roar, tiger's roar, wolf's run, cut off heaven and earth before it collapses. The sonorous and powerful ancient incantation came out of Zhou Xian's mouth. These obscure and incomprehensible words gave birth to a different kind of miracle. Bakudo's 81 Skybreaker. A transparent wall covered the sky, and a group of people from the masked legion hid behind it. Don't worry, the normal 81st Bakudo can block the 89th Heido, and that Sky Slasher, that I've chanted with all my might, can block the 90th Heido, the Black Coffin. Zhou Xian laughed proudly and confidently. Boom boom boom, the beam of light came and the attack was unprecedentedly powerful. Whether this wall, which was as thin as a cicada's wing, could block it was quite mysterious. Boom boom boom. The thick beam of light crashed into the transparent defensive wall, and there was a violent tremor. Immediately, the beam of light rushed forward like crazy, and hit the defensive wall with all its strength. Because of the intensity, there were dazzling sparks. However, from the beginning to the end, the transparent wall could not be shaken. If you want to break my defense, the 88 Heido's power is far from enough. Needs to be at least 90. Zhou Xian smiled. It's indeed not bad. Dustless nodded undeniably. The members of the Keto were indeed first class in the Keto. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth lifted into a dark sneer. However, as you said, the normal Skybreaker can block the flying dragon strikes the thief's sky-shaking thunder cannon. However, that's only for ordinary people. Sorry, I'm not in this category. Ka ka ka. As Dustless's contemptuous and arrogant voice fell, the crystal-clear transparent wall showed a crack the size of a finger, and it finally couldn't withstand the powerful force and burst. It was torn apart by the terrifying spiritual pressure and turned into flying snow fragments. Zhou Xian's pride was also torn to pieces by Dustless. The scene changed rapidly and all the masked army were stunned. Looking at the thick beam of light devouring them, they didn't even have the chance to dodge in such a short distance. When everyone was in despair, a figure swept across and faced the invincible light without fear. Chapter 970. Under the shroud of light, the members of the masked legion were as small as a chestnut in the ocean. However, the figure that appeared out of thin air was calm. The hurricane that erupted from the 88th Heido blew his clothes, but he didn't back down at all. Regardless of whether this indifference was a forced act or if he had a card up his sleeve, no one could ignore his existence. Era, it's really a fierce Keto, but Ryatsu and moves have been interpreted. Urahara Kisuk's sloppy voice spread, and then he pulled out the Zanpakuto hidden in his crutch, and casually drew a circle in the void in front of him, and then a crimson shield emerged from the water, resolutely blocking the sky. Boom boom boom. This kind of casual and seemingly unreliable trick was surprisingly strange and tenacious. Moreover, it was very effective. Dustless's devastating attack was easily defended by Urahara Kisuk. I was almost killed. Be careful later. Don't forget that it's the captains of Soul Society. Urahara Kisuk breathed a sigh of relief, then turned and solemnly reminded, "Also, that vice captain is not an ordinary person. His strength is comparable to the captain's or even beyond the captain's. Don't be confused by his vice captain's coat." "Urahar Kisuk, do you have time to worry about others?" A cold and indifferent voice full of killing intent resounded behind everyone. A handsome, tall man with a gentle smile on his mouth flashed out of thin air, and of course his attack was not inferior to Mount Tai. Hado 91, Thousand Hands Bright Sky Cannon. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Endless silver light poured down, and the entire sky was particularly dazzling. The light that almost filled the entire sky connected together and turned into a vast energy tide that spread out. Aizen Sosuke, a group of members of the Masked Legion, seeing the culprit who tortured them for hundreds of years appear, all of them glared at him, and their killing intent raged like a hurricane. Void Flash. Seeing their enemy appear, the members of the Masked Legion mustered all their strength and used their strongest moves to fight back against the energy tide that filled the sky. Several void flashes stood out. Their density and power were frightening. Wherever the red light flew, the sky where it landed would vaguely distort and evaporate. Even though number 91's Dao Breaker was powerful enough to destroy 2 void flashes, it was still no match for the other void flashes. The silver tide of energy was destroyed by the void flashes, and the void flashes rose from the ground and locked onto Sosuke Aizen. Boom boom boom. An unprecedented tremor swept through the area. The center where Aizen Sosuke was standing was directly torn apart by the violent energy waves. At the place where he stood, the void had been completely shattered. The horizon was pitch black with a terrifying gravitational force. Above him was an endless dark domain that connected to the universe and the galaxy. "Are you serious?" Captain Aizen's spiritual pressure disappeared. If Captain Aizen was hit by so many void flashes, his chances of surviving are 0. Noticing that Aizen's spiritual pressure suddenly disappeared, Dustless's first thought was that Aizen was dead, but then he looked at the old man Ikamaru Jin and confirmed that Aizen wasn't dead. He hid his spiritual pressure and deliberately hid in a corner, overlooking the battlefield like a poisonous snake. If Hirako and the others showed any flaws, he would definitely jump out and kill them. Aizen's spiritual pressure really disappeared. This time he's dead for sure. Masako Hirako took a deep breath as his eyes shone brightly. The great worry that had been plaguing his mind for many years might have been eliminated. He was in a particularly good mood, as if he was strolling through the clouds. Pfft. A sharp pain suddenly spread from his waist to his whole body. Hirako's face instantly turned pale. He turned his head and saw a nightmare figure. That cold face was different from before. It was filled with a sense of isolation. Sosuke Aizen. "It's really sad, Captain Hirako." Aizen smiled faintly as he whispered in Hirako's ear. "You want to be my enemy with this level? You're too naive. You're just like a child who hasn't grown up yet. The target they hit just now was just an illusion caused by Kyokusujatsu. In reality, Sosuke Aizen wasn't injured at all." Hirako. The members of the Masked Legion were shocked when they saw this, and they glared at Aizen. Among them, Rishi was the most furious, and she immediately released her Zanpakuto. "Cut him down already." After using Shurikai, the Zanpakuto turned into a large Zanpakuto. It looked like a ferocious beast with a bloody mouth as it swept towards Sosuke Aizen's face. "Shoot him, Shinigami." A huge cold light came from the side. The front of the light was so dazzling that no one dared to look at it directly. It was extremely fast, and when they opened their eyes wide, they saw a Zanpakuto coming towards them. Boom. Just as he was about to rip Rishi Lee's stomach open and devour her whole body, Rokush Kenshiro Nishi, who was behind him, kicked Rishi Lee away in the nick of time to save her life. The ground in the distance was directly torn into a canyon by the Shinigami. "Don't be careless, follow the battle plan I just said, split up, scatter the captains." Urahara Kisuk ordered in the face of such an embarrassing situation. The members of the Masked Legion nodded and flew towards each other. "Are you my captain?" After a while, looking at the figure flying in front of him, Dustless was quite surprised. Chapter 971. Wu Chen's opponent was a pretty girl. She had braided hair and was wearing a sailor suit. She was wearing a pair of unique colored glasses. She had the appearance of a cute female student. She was the former vice captain of the 8th Division, Lisa Sasamaru. "How strange. You don't think I'm a pushover, do you?" Wu Chen was not in a hurry to make a move. He stared at the miniskirt and the beautiful legs that were exposed outside. His pair of ordinary eyes were exceptionally cold. The deadly momentum also became peaceful and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Bring it on. Lisa Sasamaru, who pulled out her zanpakuto, was on alert. Of course, she didn't think that Dustless let her go because of his conscience. This was just the last preparation before the storm. Her brain cells spun rapidly, 10 times faster than usual, thinking about Dustless's next attack. Due to the excessive use of her brain, Lisa Yasadamaru's beautiful hair fell a little. Dustless's next sentence directly killed all the cells in Lisa Sasamaru's brain. She was so angry that she was on the verge of collapse. She pointed her finger at Dustless in disbelief. She was furious. White skin, beautiful face, slim waist, curvy breasts, long legs. How enviable. After observing for a while, Dustless's eyes were shining with the light of an expert. He gave a thumbs up to Lisa Sasamaru and then praised sincerely, "A perfect woman like you should be admired by everyone, but you read porn all day. How sinful." You've been thinking about this all day?" Lisa Sasamaru's mouth twitched when she remembered Dustless's serious and focused expression, and her voice was trembling. "I got the latest news from Kisuke Urahara. I heard that you defeated the king of Huecomundo Baligan." Lisa Sasamaru's tone was light and full of doubt, and the way she looked at Dustless was the same. "I was praising you. It's called art, not perverted. My professional foresight is far from what ordinary people can compare to." Dustless answered honestly. He opened his mouth and was about to speak when a wave of fierce attacks and angry curses followed. "A scumbag like you can actually defeat Baligan? What a joke. It seems that the rumor is true. It was indeed Baligan's hidden illness that caused his body to collapse on its own." Lisa's voice was full of fire. Her first impression of Dustless was that he was rather sunny, with a warm smile on his face. However, after hearing Dustless's words, her impression of him collapsed instantly. The dense and unique spiritual pressure all over his body began to erupt. Void flash. The huge energy ball flew toward him, leaving behind an unerasable afterimage in its wake. "This kind of pure physical attack won't work on me. How many times have I repeated this sentence?" Dustless muttered to himself in a low voice. Just like before, his whole body was still motionless, like a towering tree rooted to the ground. He neither ran nor dodged, allowing the void flash to hit him. Boom, boom. The violent explosions spread into the endless sky, and the rapid impact spread out. The matter affected by the void flash turned into ashes, leaving only a huge ball of fire burning with black smoke in the sky. Did it work? Lisa Sasamaru's face was full of hope, and her eyes stared at the depths of the fire. Her deep eyes were unusually bright, and the scene inside could be seen at a glance. Everything changed under her eyes. "Success, are you dreaming?" In the flames of life's prohibition, an untimely voice suddenly came. Immediately, the dazzling light condensed and vaguely turned into a human silhouette, and then walked out of the smoke. Dustless was still intact, without the slightest injury. His bright eyes always maintained indifference and calmness. It seemed that no trick in this world could hurt him. Lisa Sasamaru felt frustrated. "It's impossible for half-baked people like you to defeat me," Dustless said calmly with his hands crossed. His tone had a kind of pity. "In this world without hockey, it's almost impossible to touch his body. It's useful to all creatures on this planet. Any attack is useless. Don't be so sure." Lisa Sasamaru said coldly. "Still want to resist? I advise you not to struggle in vain." Dustless slightly raised his eyebrows, listening to her words. It was obvious that she still wanted to resist to the end. Just as he was about to make a move, the small object in Lisa Sasamaru's hand suddenly attracted Dustless's attention. "What is that?" "Urahara Kisuke invented it." Lisa Sasamaru's hand was holding a dark square box, which looked quite mysterious. "Goodbye." With a smug smile on her face, Lisa Sasamaru glanced at Dustless, and then the dark box in her hand suddenly shone brightly, and a black hole appeared behind her. "Thanks to Manager Urahara." Then he took a big stride forward and entered the cave. What the hell is going on? Dustless didn't expect this girl who likes to read pornographic novels to suddenly run away. His face was full of confusion, and his eyes subconsciously looked around, not only Lisa Sasamaru, but also the rest of the masked corps, and they all disappeared strangely. "Want to run?" No way. His pupils rapidly turned into scarlet sharingan, and his eyes stared at the black hole that hasn't closed yet, and a powerful eye power gushed out. Kemui. It should be safe now. In the dark space, Lisa Sasamaru breathed heavily, but at this moment, a bright light shone in from behind her and a teasing sentence. Follow me to Soul Society. It's safe there. Chapter 972. The mocking voice from behind made Lisa's nerves tense up. She turned around with a mechanical expression, only to see the black space that was supposed to be closed was torn apart by some kind of mysterious energy wave with absolute power. It was as worthless as a piece of paper. Young lady, those who are targeted by me can only admit defeat. The clear voice was very loud and clear, revealing an invisible and mysterious energy that could steal one's soul. It quickly devoured Lisa's rationality, and her originally clear and confused eyes suddenly became incomparably hesitant. In the dark and sealed world, there was only dead silence. Lisa Sasamaru was the only one there, and the strange world around her was giving her the cold shoulder. There was no vitality and she was the only one in this world. What is this place? Lisa muttered to herself. Her voice was filled with uncertainty about the future. At the same time, an unprecedented exhaustion swept through her body, numbing her nervous system. Just when she was about to fall asleep, a few figures suddenly appeared in her mind. Her old friends, the members of the masked army, one by one appeared in her mind. For a moment she was full of energy, looking at the strange and cold dark space. After careful analysis, her eyes shone with wisdom. Pucci. Lisa's white and tender arms splattered blood everywhere. Her face was as white as paper, using self-harm to awaken her inner rationality. The drowsiness in her mind instantly disappeared. At the same time, the strange dark space in front of her also disappeared with the wind. Where's that guy? Lisa, who regained her consciousness, looked left and right, bitterly searching for traces of Dustless. But strangely there was no trace of him, as if he had disappeared from the world without a trace. This is really surprising. You can actually get rid of the illusion worthy of praise. But what awaits you is not the dawn of victory but more ruthless despair. The ghostly voice sounded in Lisa's ears. She felt a pair of cold eyes staring at her and her soul trembled. Because it was an illusion, she was not injured. Xiao xiao xiao. Without even thinking, she decisively turned into a gust of wind and disappeared, heading straight for the end point behind her. The pressure that Dustless brought to Lisa Shibataru was too great, exceeding all the enemies she had ever known. It was like a giant bullying a weak baby. This was cheating. Damn it, when did such a monster appear in Soul Society? Lisa cursed in her heart. At the same time she increased her speed and rushed toward the exit in front of her. Only by reaching there could she barely survive. Dustless stopped and looked at the area where Lisa was rushing at full speed. His eyes flashed with surprise. Hueco Mundo, what is she doing there? Could it be that the Great Voids intend to help this group of masks? Driven by curiosity, Dustless's feet were like a gust of wind, following closely behind Hueco Circle and Lisa Itsumuru. Hueco Mundo, as the name suggested, was the headquarters of Hueco Mundo. It was also a barren land. Ever since the king of Hueco Mundo, Bailigan, died tragically in Soul Society, the ownerless Hueco Mundo had fallen into a reign of terror. In order to fight for the position of king of Hueco Mundo, the Great Voids had cruel battles every day. In the sky above Hueco Mundo, the sky suddenly distorted and a long and narrow black crack was drawn. Then a beautiful figure rushed out from it in a sorry state. Then the black crack closed and it was as good as new. Lisa Yukimaru looked down at Hueco Mundo with a relaxed expression. She finally had the confidence to deal with Dustless. Ka. In just the blink of an eye, the closed void began to distort rapidly and then burst open with a bang. Dustless walked out from it. Unlike Lisa Yukimaru, Dustless, who just came out, was treated cruelly. Several flashes of different colors greeted him mercilessly. Is this how Hueco Mundo treats its guests? Could it be that this group of cold Great Voids are also lecherous, hitting men to please women? Dustless's face darkened. Lisa Yukimaru acted as if nothing had happened. She completely ignored the existence of the flashes and locked onto herself. Boom boom boom. The huge flashes exploded and the whole sky trembled, stirring up ripples. Dustless's body was also split into 4 or 5, turning into photons that filled the sky. But even so, in the end he was restored as usual, and it could not shake him at all. No wonder it attracted me to Hueco Mundo. I'm afraid it was already prepared. Looking down, it was obvious that something was wrong with the great voids below. They all roared at Dustless, but Lisa Yukimaru was ignored by the murderous great voids as if she did not exist. But what's the use of this? Dustless shook his head. There were too many great voids on the ground, as many as the grains of sand in the Ganges. But no matter how many there were, it was useless. Dustless could not do it with numbers. Take your time to deal with them. After saying that, Lisa Yukimaru took out the mysterious black box again. It flashed with a strange light, and the space beside her split open again and she stepped into it. Dustless was about to chase after her, but the blind great voids swarmed over. The number of them was so great that it made people hallucinate as if the whole world was their enemy. There were too many voids. Although they were all low-level voids and had not even reached the level of Jillian, there were thousands of them. He mobilized high-density chakra in his body, and his eyes changed as if he wanted to destroy all the creatures in Hueco Mundo. He was filled with murderous intent. Super Shinra Tensei. A super strong impact visible to the naked eye spread over an area of 10 kilometers in an instant. All the voids died in an instant, and they could not even do the most basic thing of stalling for time. A meteorite crater appeared on the ground out of nowhere. However, at this moment, an unexpected figure blocked in front of him. Dustless immediately determined that it was an enemy, and a very strong one at that. Chapter 973. But at this time an unexpected figure appeared in front of him. Dustless immediately knew that it was an enemy, and a very strong one at that. The person who came was very muscular, with eyebrow rings and earrings, white hair, short hair at the temples and back, and long bangs in the front. Just by looking at him, one could tell that he was a fierce man who was easily angered. The former captain of the 9th Division, Rokush Kensher. Shinigami, you almost killed my companions just now. So, I'm going to tear you apart alive to avenge them. Rokush Kensher pointed his thick finger at Dustless and swore. Looking at this guy with pity in the eyes of Dustless, it was just a boring declaration of death. Turn into ashes, wind of the broken earth. A gust of wind hit Dustless from the front. The range was extremely wide, sharper than the blade of a sword, and the surrounding sky was also filled with this kind of sharp wind blade. Wind attribute Zanpakuto? Dustless's injured body was healed, and he was curious. Rokush Kenshi's Zanpakuto was covered in white light, and it was extremely fierce. The wind that could easily cut through steel came from the body of the Zanpakuto. With a chuckle, Dustless hooked his finger at him and said, "Bring it on." Arrogant. Hearing this, Rokush Kenshi's face was cold and his body swept up a storm, and it was no different from Dustless's speed, and it was impossible to see his movement speed. Pucci. When he realized Dustless's body was separated from his body, and the white Zanpakuto pierced through his body, and Dustless was brutally cut in half by Rokush Kensher. This is just the beginning. Rokush Kensher glanced at the two halves of the body ruthlessly, and then his Zanpakuto shook and Dustless's body changed dramatically again. Rokush Kensher also stepped back 100 meters, and then he thought of the danger of his Zanpakuto, and then he stepped back a few hundred meters before he felt relieved. The Pucci. The incorporeal blades of wind suddenly spread out from Dustless's body and attacked the surrounding space uncontrollably, leaving thick marks on the ground. The host was unable to control it. No matter if it was an enemy or an ally, anyone who got close to the host would suffer the destruction of the wind blades. Roshi Kensher himself was no exception. On the other hand, Dustless himself was in an even more miserable state. He was sliced into countless pieces in a short period of time. But even so, he was still the same as before, and not a single drop of blood flowed out from him. This should work. Rakechi Fist Nishi heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to launch another intensive attack, a sudden voice immediately shattered his high fighting spirit. Frankly speaking, any move is useful to me, but it's impossible to hit my body. However, your ability is very interesting. Everything that is hit by it will explode. Dustless's body, which had been broken into countless pieces, reassembled. He said calmly, "Perhaps there is someone in this world who can hurt me, but one thing is for sure. At least this person is not you." A high-density flash condensed at the tip of his foot, and after locking onto Roki Boxer Nishi, he kicked out. Light speed kick. Roki boxer Nishi was shocked when he saw this. Sensing the terrifying speed of the light attack, he immediately reacted rationally and used his unique void form ability without hesitation. Of course, for the sake of safety, in addition to void form, he also used his best move. Bankai Iron Fist Wind Break. Roki boxer Nishi's Ryatsu increased several times in a short few seconds. After using his Bankai, his fighting posture also changed dramatically. He held a sword with teeth in each hand and his arms were wrapped by caterpillar tracks. The caterpillar tracks on both arms were connected to his back and there was also armor on his back. His Bankai was able to pour the explosive power into his fists, and the explosive power would endlessly pour into his opponent when his fists hit. All in all, it was a very powerful Bankai. Ka. Roki boxer Nishi stomped his feet on the ground and suddenly the ground collapsed. He gathered a powerful force in his hands, and then calmly looked at the light that was swooping down. With a disdainful face he punched out. Bang! The light was effectively restrained and it couldn't penetrate Roki boxer Nishi's fist. It could only graze his fist and the effect was minimal. After a few seconds the light became weaker. Whoosh! Roki boxer Nishi's tiger eyes revealed a hint of dominance, and the light that was in a stalemate immediately collapsed. Then the Ryatsu that erupted from his body was no weaker than Vasto Lord's. Roki boxer Nishi locked his eyes on Dustless, and when he was about to use his full strength to attack, something strange happened again. A black shadow rushed over and its front end was surrounded by a cold light. It was so focused on observing Dustless's Roki boxer Nishi that it didn't notice this subtle change. Idiot behind you! Seeing that Roki boxer Nishi didn't know what was going on and was just looking at him, Dustless couldn't help but complain, "How did someone like you become the captain?" Roki boxer Nishi was stunned when he heard this. He suddenly felt that he was locked by a mysterious killing intent. Poochie! Even with the armor on his back, the invincible cold light easily shattered it, and penetrated deep into Roki boxer Nishi's internal organs, devouring his life force like a whale. In just a few seconds this former captain's life was ended. I thought it was just a simple mission, but it seems that the situation is getting more and more complicated. Dustless squinted his eyes and there was a strange light in his eyes. He carefully looked at the person who gave Roki boxer Nishi a fatal blow. He couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Then his eyes became cold and he sneered, "But this is also good. Since you are here to die, it saves me the trouble of looking for you." Chapter 974. Following Dustless's line of sight, the newcomer was a tall man with a ferocious face and a murderous aura. He had a broad physique and a sturdy waist. His strong body exuded explosive power, especially his Zanpakuto, which was half the length of a person and was still stained with blood. Just a glance from this person would make you feel like your life was in danger. The wind swept through the world and the sand danced in the air. The mysterious man who attacked Rokush Kenshir was wearing a pure white captain's Haori Kenpachi Ghost Yenching. The order from Central Room 46 was to capture them alive. But now you killed him. This is a great dereliction of duty, Captain Ghost Yenching. Dustless's body stood in the sky, looking down at Kenpachi Ghost Yenching, who gave Rokush Kenshir a fatal blow. His cold face suddenly raised a mischievous smile. What Ghost Yenching did was in line with Dustless's intentions. Kiki, hearing this, Yenching Kenpachi was unmoved. His Zanpakuto slowly pulled out Rokush Kenishi's crushed organs, causing Rokush Kenishi's body to twitch and spit out blood. What does it matter? I'll kill you soon anyway and then I'll just blame everything on you. How about the script that I've carefully written for you? This is the script you prepared for me? Just like you, you're extremely shallow. Hearing this, Wu Chen narrowed his deep black eyes. The flickering light in Wu Chen's eyes was particularly terrifying. Then he smiled and said, "Why don't you listen to the script that I have prepared for you, or rather for myself?" "What do you mean?" Kenpachi Ghost Yenching's ugly face stiffened. Smelling Dustless's words, he looked at him in confusion. "No matter what, this time you will definitely die." "Calm down." Dustless completely ignored these words. They went in one ear and out the other. After reorganizing his words and thoughts, for fear that the inexperienced Yenching Kenpachi would not understand the meaning, he said in a very slow tone with a smile, "Captain Yenching Kenpachi's divine power is unparalleled. With overwhelming strength he inflicted heavy losses on the masked legion. Who would have thought that the world is unpredictable? He was killed by Rokukai Kenpachi, who rushed over, and then hee. This laughter was abnormally gloomy. Ghost Yanqing Jianba's mouth was dry and his tongue was dry. His heart thumped and he knew that things were not going well. Wuxian didn't care about Yan Guicheng's reaction. Captain Yan Guicheng, who was ambushed, unfortunately fell. Then I appeared. I don't need to say what's next. You should know. Don't be so proud. Yan Cheng's face was ashen. Naturally he knew what Dustless meant. He guessed that Dustless would try his best to kill Roshi Boxer Nishi, and then take his corpse to Soul Society to claim credit. Not only that, but Sword 8's death in battle would also necessitate the election of a new team leader. In the end, it was very likely that the position would fall to Dustless, who had distinguished himself in battle. This kid is good at calculating. Yanqing Kenpachi's old face was twitching, and his round head was smoking. Obviously he was very angry. The chakra in his body was raging and the whole person's hostility was rising to a new level. You two bastards! A hoarse and low roar came without warning, and then a very dangerous energy fluctuation surged. In the blink of an eye, Dustless and Yanqing Kenpachi were swallowed up. Looking at the source, the swaying Roshi Boxer Nishi's body turned crimson, filled with a blazing heat. The temperature as high as thousands of degrees Celsius instantly forced Yanqing Kenpachi to retreat. Not only the body, but Roshi Boxer Nishi was also flashing the red light of a beast. It seems that Roshi Boxer Nishi wants to die together. Anyway, he has already stepped into the coffin. It's best to use that to pull me and Yanqing Kenpachi into the coffin. This is understandable. After all, that forbidden technique uses burning the body as a medium. But it's really crazy. His observation haki rippled like water ripples, and all the movements within a radius of 10 miles were all played out in Dustless's eyes. Boom boom boom. The ground under Dustless's feet trembled violently, and an indescribable heat spread out. The surrounding Dainu with weak Ryatsu was instantly turned into ashes. The range of the vibration gradually extended, swallowing the sky and the earth, and the entire Huecomundo seemed to be trembling. Yanqing Kenpachi, who noticed the abnormality, looked at Roshi Boxer Nishi in disbelief. Only then did he realize that this guy was once a captain-level Shinigami, and he must also know that forbidden technique. You want to drag me to the grave with you? Ghost Yanqing, whose expression changed greatly, flew into a rage out of humiliation. Soon after, his spittle flew all over the sky. He gritted his teeth and said, "You want to drag me down with you? Dream on." Shoo shoo shoo. Yanqing Kenpachi's body gradually lost feeling and turned into an afterimage. As for his body, it had already rushed madly towards Roshi Boxer Nishi. Idiot, it's too late. Roshi Boxer Nishi smiled calmly, and the ground under his feet suddenly appeared a huge fiery red saber-shaped shadow. The moment Yanqing Kenpachi touched him, Roshi Boxer Nishi indifferently blew prelude to doomsday. Path of destruction. Cremation with one blade. The saber-shaped shadow covered the sky and the sun, and the attack range was extremely wide. Roshi Boxer Nishi was extremely ruthless, and even he was in the center of the attack. Ka. The earth shattered and a flaming broadsword with boundless power appeared out of thin air. The blazing flames covered the boundless horizon. Not only Ghost Yanqing but even Sword 8 and Dustless in the sky were hit by the flames. The great void within a radius of tens of kilometers was all melted and evaporated by the blazing heat. The ground was all scorched and all life was wiped out. The ground 100 kilometers away was also affected, and there were violent vibrations. The blazing heat swept through the entire Huecomundo. It was a mass extinction. Roshi Boxer Nishi exhausted all his spiritual pressure and used his body as a medium to perform cremation with one blade. The power was beyond imagination, and even Dustless in the sky was beaten to a pulp. In just a few minutes, the body was destroyed several times after recombining several times. Dustless benefited from his elemental transformation ability. It was not hard to imagine what would happen to Yanqing Kenpachi in the end. Chapter 975. The blazing high temperature spread to Huecomundo. It was as if they were living in a hot steamer, unable to breathe. The thin oxygen was all evaporated and the affected central area was in a mess. Bang bang bang, the giant blade-shaped flame had obviously reached its limit. A dazzling crimson light flashed and immediately turned into countless fragments. The blade light that was about to destroy Hueco Mundo was extinguished. The greater voids in Hueco Mundo also barely regained their calm, and the shadow of the invisible guillotine above their heads also disappeared. He should be completely dead now. Well, I don't have to do anything. Dustless, who was floating in the sky, was still safe and sound. He looked down at the scorched ground below with extreme calmness. In a world without hockey, he was like a fish in water. Where's Ghost Xianxia? His gaze fell on the ground below. There was only one corpse. It was Xianxia. His body was black, and the stench of meat floated from his body from time to time. All his internal organs were burned, and he couldn't be more dead. The former captain of a generation fell into such a state. It was indeed a pity that the world was fickle. As for Ghost Xianxia, there was no trace of him. Are you looking for me? A familiar voice sounded in his ears, and then a cold light swept from the side. Dustless was different from before. He felt that something was wrong with the blade light. This time he didn't use his elemental transformation ability. Kemui. The blade light passed through Dustless's body, but he was safe and sound. At the critical moment, his body quickly blurred and dodged this fatal attack. Stained with blood. What is this? Bankai? Turning his head, Dustless stared at Ghost Xianxia's Zanpakuto attentively. Unlike before, the entire blade was bleeding blood red out of nowhere. When it landed on the ground, the originally white desert instantly became incomparably pitch black. It was similar to the aging power of Baelgang back then. That was close. If I didn't have enough time to use Bankai, I'm afraid I would have been killed by one sword cremation. Ghost Xianxia twisted his fat body and said with ease. At this time his upper body was naked and his skin was very dark. His body was also filled with a faint stench of meat. Although he used Bankai immediately and greatly weakened one sword cremation's attack, he was still slightly injured. Your ability is not bad. Looking carefully at the blood-stained Zanpakuto, Wuxia nodded slightly and his eyes lit up. He instantly understood something. It can even corrode photons. This is the first time I have seen such a mysterious Zanpakuto. When he used elementization just now, the photons that had yet to disperse were all corroded by the soul-assimilating blade wrapped in blood. Tisk, Ghost Xianxia laughed arrogantly to cover up the shock in his heart. He thought in surprise, what the hell is going on with this kid? It's obviously just an ordinary attack, but he instantly understood the ability of my Zanpakuto. Anything that came into contact with the blood flowing from the tip of his blade, even if it was a photon, would be corroded. As long as it came into contact with the strange blood, it would instantly vanish into thin air. Dao Breaker 63, 6-rod light prison. The chakra in his body surged as Ghost Xianxia's 8th blade pointed at Dustless. 6 huge light ribbons attacked from all directions. In the blink of an eye, Dustless was bound in place. It's over. Seeing this, Ghost Xianxia laughed and attacked with his terrifying blade. The purple light at the tip of the blade was pulsating with a demonic luster. This 6-rod light prison is much stronger than before. After using Bankai, my strength in all aspects has improved. Looking down at the huge light ribbons around his waist, Dustless lowered his head and thought. Last time he just walked around and tore apart the 6-rod light prison with his powerful strength. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The blood-red slash came head-on and a trench was formed on the ground. The area covered by the red light was a mess and it was a deadly threat. In a trance, Dustless seemed to see the black and white impermanence coming to take his life. There is such a heaven-defying Bankai. Can directly melt everything, even photons. Could it be that when I tried to use elementization just now? Thinking of the experience that he had never had before, Dustless whispered. In fact, the purple-red blood was quite similar to Amaterasu, and the ability was quite similar. However, Amaterasu could not devour photons, but Ghost Xianxia could. Then his expression turned serious, and the eye power of Rinnegan overflowed, and a vast repulsive force suddenly appeared. Babrata. The repulsive force that was far more powerful than Super Shinra Tensei exploded. It was boundless and it was aimed at Ghost Xianxia. In an instant his entire body was annihilated. An unprecedentedly deep pit was formed on the ground. Ghost Xianxia's 8th sword disappeared into thin air along with his attack. This technique is undefeatable. A lightsaber appeared in his hand, and Dustless waved his hand to break the 6-rod light prison that bound his body. He immediately walked toward Ghost Yanqing, intending to give him the final fatal blow. Mahabharata was a technique that belonged exclusively to Dustless. Its meaning was quite simple and its theory was the same as Amaterasu. Where the gaze was focused, there would be a repulsive force that was no weaker than Super Shinra Tensei. It was unguarded and had great destructive power. "It's over, Captain Yanqing." Looking down at the pale ghost Yanqing on the ground, Dustless said indifferently, "You can go in peace. I will replace you as the captain of the 11th Division, and I will finish what you have not done." Then Dustless slowly raised his lightsaber. "I can't die like this." Ghost Yanqing ignored the pain from his broken bones and tendons, and forcibly mobilized the Ryatsu in his body, and a ferocious look flashed in his eyes. "What is wrong with the people in this world? They want to die together with the enemy so easily." Dustless's face was full of confusion. Ghost Yanqing's eyes were quite similar to Rockafist's Nishi's, with hysterical madness.